Chapter 33, The Foundations of Winter. The arrival of a new maester was usually a quiet affair, marked by the rattling of chains and the scratching of quills. But for Ned Stark, it was a strategic vulnerability assessment. Maester Luwin arrived at Winterfell a moon after the accident that had claimed Whaleys. He was a small man with grey eyes and thin hair, shivering in his robes as he climbed down from the cart that had brought him from White Harbour. He looked nothing like the pinched, watery-eyed Whaleys. He looked kind. Ned sat in the Lord's solar, waiting. The fire was roaring, heating the room to a comfortable temperature that seemed to surprise Luwin as he was ushered in. "Lord Stark," Luwin said, bowing low, his chain clinking softly. Valyrian steel, iron, gold, silver. A man of many links. "It is an honor. I am Maester Luwin, sent by the Citadel to serve Winterfell." "Maester," Ned said, not rising. "You are welcome here. The North has need of learned men." He watched Luwin carefully. He didn't just look, he reached. Ned extended his awareness. He didn't drill into Luwin's mind like a pickaxe, he let his perception settle over the man like a heavy cloak. He felt for the jagged spikes of malice, the muddy colors of deceit, or the cold void of ambition. What he found was grey. It was a calm, orderly mind. Luwin was thinking about the warmth of the room, the state of the library he had yet to inspect, and the young lord in front of him who looked far too grim for his years. There was loyalty there, loyalty to his vows, loyalty to the Citadel, and a nascent desire to do a good job in this frozen outpost. Ned relaxed the mental grip. Luwin blinked, rubbing his temple as if a sudden headache had passed. "My lord?" Luwin asked, sensing the shift in the air. "I was just thinking," Ned said smoothly. "My father relied heavily on his maester. I intend to do the same. But I must warn you, Maester Luwin. Winterfell is changing. We are trying new things here. Things the Citadel might not find in their books. Learning is a lifelong pursuit, my lord," Luwin smiled, a gentle crinkling of eyes. "If you are teaching, I am ready to learn." "Good," Ned said. "Because we are going to be very busy. I need a count of the winter stores. I need an estimation of grain yields for the next 3 years. And I need you to help me design a sanitation system for a town of 30,000. Luwin's eyes widened. 30,000? Winter Town is barely 10,000. "Not for long," Ned said. "Go get settled, Maester. We start tomorrow." A castle is a living thing. It breathes. It eats. And it listens. Ned knew that secrets were the most valuable currency in Westeros, and right now, Winterfell was holding the most expensive secret in history. Jon Snow. He couldn't afford leaks. During the weeks it took for the glass materials to arrive, Ned didn't sit idle. He hunted. He walked the corridors at odd hours. He stood in the shadows of the Great Hall during dinner. He sat in the God's Wood, extending his senses until he could feel the heartbeat of every person within the walls. Most people felt like background noise: hunger, fatigue, lust, boredom. But spies felt sharp. They felt anxious. They felt like people watching a door instead of walking through it. He caught the first one in the stables. A groom, barely 20, was listening at the door of the guest house while Arthur Dayne and Lyanna were talking. Ned stepped out of the shadows. "Interesting conversation?" Ned asked. The boy jumped, spinning around. My lord. I was just checking the horses." "The horses are in the stalls," Ned said, his voice low. "You are at the door." He reached into the boy's mind. Fear. Guilt. Coin. "Who pays you?" Ned asked. He pushed a pulse of command into the words. "A man," the boy blurted out, his eyes glazing over. "In White Harbour. He gives me silvers to tell him who comes and goes." It didn't matter. The leak had to be plugged. Ned didn't execute him. The wall needed men, and execution was a waste of a strong back. You like listening? Ned asked. You can listen for wildlings. Pack your things. Corgile is coming in a few days. He will take you with him. Until then, you will be staying in the Dugians. The boy paled, falling to his knees. The wall? Please, my lord. It's the wall or the block, Ned said coldly. Choose. The purge continued. He found a scullery maid who was smuggling letters out in laundry baskets. She was sending reports to a contact in Searwyn. Ned sent her to the Hornwoods, with a letter to Lord Halley's to put her to work in the deep kitchens where she would never see a raven. He found 3 children who were being paid in sweets to count the number of guards on the walls. They were just children. They didn't understand. Ned sat them down in his solar. He gave them sweets. And then he gave them jobs. You have sharp eyes, Ned told them. I need sharp eyes. But you look for me now. You watch the walls. You watch the strangers. And you tell no one but me. Understand? The children nodded, eyes wide, mouths full of honey cakes. Ned assigned a trusted guard, one of the survivors of the Trident, to watch over them. They were his little birds now. But unlike Varys, Ned kept them in a cage. By the end of the moon, the castle was tight. The whispers stopped. The only secrets leaving Winterfell were the ones Ned Stark wanted to leave. While Ned secured the walls, Ashura Stark secured the hearth. Winterfell was grim. The servants were used to Stark austerity: hard beds, cold food, and silence. They were suspicious of the new southern lady with her purple eyes and silk dresses. Ashura noticed the side glances. She felt the coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. She didn't retreat. She advanced. She walked into the great kitchens, the heart of the castle's domestic life. Gage, the head cook, was a burly man who had served Rickard Stark for 30 years. He stopped chopping turnips when she entered, wiping his hands on a greasy apron. My lady. Gage grunted, clearly unhappy about a noblewoman invading his domain. Gage, Ashura said, her voice warm and melodious. It smells hearty in here. It's stew, my lady, Gage said defensively. Keeps the men warm. It does, Ashura agreed, stepping closer to the massive cauldron. She picked up a spoon and tasted it. It was bland. Salty, meaty, but lifeless. It needs heat, Ashura said gently. Gage frowned. It's boiling, my lady. Not that kind of heat, Ashura smiled. She reached into the pouch at her belt and pulled out a small jar of dried Dornish peppers she had brought from Starfall. May I? Gage looked skeptical but nodded. Ashura crumbled a pinch of the red flakes into the pot. She stirred it. Try it now. Gage dipped his spoon. He tasted it. His eyebrows shot up. The heat bloomed in his chest, chasing away the chill of the drafty kitchen. That's warming, Gage admitted. The north is cold, Ashura said, addressing the kitchen staff who were watching. We need fire in our bellies. Gage, I want to see the winter clothes distribution. I noticed the laundresses shivering yesterday. If they are cold, the linens are cold. If the linens are cold, the Lord is cold. She looked at the head housekeeper, a stern woman named Corey. We have wool in the stores, Ashura said. Let's use it. New cloaks for the staff. Thicker blankets for the barracks. Lord Stark wants his people warm. Willa looked at Ashura, surprised by the concern. That would be generous, my lady. It is necessary, Ashura corrected. We are a household. A family. She smiled at them, a dazzling starfall smile that seemed to light up the soot-stained room. Now, Ashura said, turning back to Gage. About this venison for tonight. Have you ever tried roasting it with honey and thyme? By the time she left, Gage was humming a Dornish tune, and the staff was looking at her not as a stranger, but as the woman who brought the sun. The mornings belonged to the Force. The godswood became their sanctuary. Before the sun rose, when the mist was still clinging to the hot pools, the four of them would gather. Ned, Benjen, Arthur, Anna. They sat in a circle around the heart tree. Breathe, Ned instructed. Feel the cold. Do not fight it. Let it pass through you. Benjen was the hardest to teach, but the most stable. His connection to the Force was slow to rouse, but immovable. He struggled with telekinesis, lifting a rock made him sweat and shake. But his ability to shield himself was prodigious. Push him, Ned ordered Arthur. Arthur Dane extended a hand. He sent a wave of force pressure at Benjen. It wasn't a full blast, but enough to knock a man over. Benjen grunted. He didn't move. He didn't block it with his hands, he blocked it with his will. The energy hit him and dissipated. Good, Ned nodded. Your defense is solid, Ben. You endure. Anna was the opposite. Lyanna Anna was restless. The meditation bored her. She wanted to do. Lift the stone, Anna, Ned said. She glared at the stone. It didn't just lift, it shot into the air, smashing into a tree trunk and shattering. Oops, she muttered. Control, Ned sighed. You have raw power, Anna. But power without direction is dangerous. You must channel it. He worked with her on force speed. It suited her. She was naturally fast, agile. With the Force, she became difficult to track. Ned sparred with her. He moved at half speed, letting her press him. She attacked with a fury that was terrifying, her wooden sword humming through the air. Faster! Ned urged. Don't think about the strike. Be the strike. She flowed. She dipped under his guard and tapped his chest. Got you, she grinned, breathless. You did, Ned admitted. You're fast, Lya. Quick. Deadly. But you leave yourself open. Open. If you get hit, you fall. Don't get hit. And then there was Arthur. The Sword of the Morning was a prodigy. His mind, disciplined by years of knighthood, took to the mental aspects of the Force easily. He didn't have the raw power of the Starks, he couldn't shatter rocks or freeze water, but his ability to anticipate was evolving into something beautiful. He could enter a state of flow where he was untouchable. He sensed attacks before they happened. He moved with an economy of motion that made him seem lazy, until you realized his blade was already at your throat. Your focus is your strength, Ned told him. You guide the battle. You don't just fight your opponent, you sense the space around them. It feels silent, Arthur described it one morning, resting down on his knees. Like the world holds its breath before I move. That is the center, Ned said. Stay there. Ned watched them. They were growing stronger every day. We will need it, he thought, looking up at the red leaves of the weirwood. The long night is coming. And 3 warriors won't be enough. But it's a start. A month and a half after the accident, the barges arrived. They came up the White Knife, pulled by sweating men, loaded down until the gunnels were inches from the water. Sand. Tons of it. White silica from the coast. Limestone dust from the quarries. Barrels of soda ash. Roderick Castle rode ahead of the caravan, looking exhausted but triumphant. It's here, my lord, Roderick reported, sliding from his horse in the courtyard. Enough sand to build a desert. Excellent, Ned said. He looked at the line of carts and wagons transferring the cargo from the river to the castle. Among the workers unloading the carts, there was a woman in a grey wool dress with her hair tied back in a severe braid. She carried sacks of soda ash with a surprising ease, moving efficiently between the wagons and the storerooms. Anna, Benyon called out, walking over with a clipboard. We need those sacks in the dry storage. If they get wet, they clump. I know, Liana Anna said, hefting a heavy sack onto her shoulder. I'm not an idiot. I'm just doing the work. She wiped sweat from her forehead with a dusty sleeve. She liked the work. The physical exertion quieted her mind. It kept the memories of the tower and the screams at bay. When she was carrying stone or sorting sand, she wasn't a fallen lady or a dead princess. She was just useful. You're working too hard, Benyon noted, seeing the dirt on her face. Ned said you could supervise. I hate supervising, Anna grunted, dropping the sack onto a pile. I like doing. Besides, if I sit still, I start thinking. And I don't want to think today. Benyon looked at his sister. He saw the grief she carried, hidden under the labor. All right, Benyon said softly. But take a break. Or Ashura will have my head for working you to death. Ashura is busy charming the cooks, Anna smiled thinly. I'm busy building the future. She grabbed another sack. Less talking. More moving. The site Ned had chosen for the new glassworks was a hive of activity. The single experimental furnace had been replaced by a row of 5 massive, beehive-shaped kilns. They were built of firebrick, reinforced with iron bands Mikan had forged. A system of clay pipes channeled water from the hot springs through the walls of the workshop, keeping the ambient temperature tropical even as the snow fell outside. Ned stood on the catwalk overlooking the floor. It's hot, Ashura noted, fanning herself. She was holding Cregan, who was fascinated by the glowing orange mouths of the furnaces. It needs to be, Ned said. Below them, Benyon Stark was shouting orders. Stoke it. TOU2, swap out. Keep the rhythm. The workers were small folk. Farmers, tanners, potters, people Ned had handpicked for their steady hands and willingness to learn. They wore heavy leather aprons and tinted goggles. Ned had spent weeks training Benyon. He had poured the knowledge of the glass making, the chemistry, the timing, the safety protocols. Benyon had absorbed it with the desperate focus of a younger brother wanting to prove his worth. Now, Benyon was the foreman. Pour. Benyon commanded. 2 men used a massive pair of tongs to lift a glowing crucible from Furnace 1. They moved in sync, guided by Benyon's hand signals. They tilted the pot over the casting table, a massive slab of iron 10 feet long. The molten glass flowed like honey. It was clearer now. Ned had adjusted the recipe, adding a pinch of manganese to offset the green iron tint. Roll it. The roller team moved in. They pushed the heavy iron cylinder over the glass, flattening it into a sheet. It hissed. Steam rose from the wet wooden tools. To the lair. They transferred the sheet to the annealing oven. Ned watched the process. It was crude by modern standards, but for Westeros, it was impressive. He's good at this, Ashura said, watching Benyon wipe soot from his face. He is, Ned agreed. He likes the fire. It gives him a purpose. Benyon looked up, spotting them on the catwalk. He grinned, his teeth white in his blackened face. We have 20 sheets today, Ned. Benyon shouted over the roar of the fires. 20. Double it by next week. Ned shouted back. Slave driver. Benyon laughed, turning back to his crew. Dash. That night, Ned sat in his solar with Maester Luwin. The desk was covered in plans. The glass is flowing, Ned said. Now we need to use it. He unrolled a large map of the Winterfell grounds. We expand the glass gardens here, here, and here. Ned pointed to the empty plots of land within the double walls. 3 acres to start. We use the new clear panes. Double-layered fur insulation. Luwin adjusted his chain, looking at the drawings. 3 acres, my lord, that would produce enough food to feed the castle and the winter town. That's the point, Ned said. But it's just the start. Once we have the gardens built here, we export. Export. We sell the glass, Ned said. To the Umbers. The Karstarks. The Manderleys. I want every holdfast in the north to have a greenhouse. I want the price of grain in winter to drop to nothing because we are growing it ourselves. It will ruin the trade with the Riverlands, Lewin warned. They rely on selling us food in the lean years. Let them eat their own grain, Ned said. The north feeds itself. Lewin stared at the plans, his mind racing through the logistical implications. This wasn't just farming, it was independence. My lord, Lewin said slowly. These ideas, they are necessary, Ned said. Winter is coming, Maester. And when it does, I want the north to be a fortress of warmth. He looked at Lewin. Can you manage the numbers? The sourcing? The labor allocation? Lewin straightened. He was a man of the citadel, a man of administration. This was a challenge worthy of his chain. I can, my lord. It will be monumental. Then get to work. Dash. Ned sat alone in the solar. The fire had died down to embers. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He checked his mental map. Glassworks, operational. Spy network, dismantled. Training, progressing. Family, safe. Chapter 34, The Water of Life. The solar was warm, thanks to the newly rooted pipes beneath the floorboards, but Ned Stark's mood was cool as he stared at the ledgers spread across his weirwood desk. Maester Lewin stood beside him, hands tucked into his sleeves, looking equally grim. The glassworks are operational, my lord, Lewin said. Lord Benyon reports that production has doubled in the last week. We have enough panes to glaze the first acre of the new gardens. Good, Ned said. And the cost? Significant, Lewin admitted. The sand barges from the coast, the coal from the Wolf's Wood, the extra rations for the workers, the treasury is bleeding, Lord Stark. We have the tax exemption, yes, but we are spending gold faster than we are generating it. Ned rubbed his temples. Infrastructure was expensive. In the civilization games of his past life, you just clicked a button and waited a few turns. In reality, you had to pay for every nail, every meal, and every hour of labor. He needed a trade good. Something high value, low weight, and non-perishable. Something that could be exported to the south, or even across the narrow sea, to bring gold flowing back into the north. Glass was the long game. The food it produced would keep his people alive, but it wouldn't make them rich, not yet. He needed something faster. Ned stood up and walked to the sideboard. He poured himself a cup of ale. It was brown, thick, and tasted faintly of yeast and old barrels. It was sustenance, not pleasure. He looked at the cup. Alcohol. The north drank ale. The south drank wine. The Ironborn drank seawater, mostly. But no one in West Eros had mastered the art of high-proof, clean distillation. There were rumors of fire milk in the east, and crude moonshines made in hill tribes, but nothing refined. Nothing industrial. Ned smiled. Grain was heavy to transport. It rotted. It was eaten by rats. But if you fermented that grain, boiled it, captured the vapor, and condensed it, you turned 1,000 pounds of wheat into 100 bottles of water of life. Liquid gold that never spoiled, warmed the blood in winter, and got people drunk enough to forget the cold. Maester, Ned said, turning back to Lewin. How much barley do we have in the stores? A fair amount, my lord. The harvest was good. And potatoes? Lewin frowned. Potatoes? You mean the earth apples the mountain clans grow? Yes. Earth apples. They are, peasant food, my lord. Fit for stews, mostly. Fit for empires, Ned corrected. Set aside 100 bushels of barley. And get me as many earth apples as you can find. May I ask why, my lord? Are we expecting a famine? No, Ned grinned. We're opening a distillery. Ned spent the rest of the morning sketching. He drew a pot still. It was a beautiful shape, a large, bulbous copper kettle narrowing into a swan neck, which then fed into a spiral condensing coil submerged in a tank of cold water, the worm. He sketched the specifications. Material, copper. Essential. Iron leaves a metallic taste and reacts with sulfur. Copper purifies. Heat source, direct coal fire or steam jacket. Cooling, constant flow of cold water from the springs, cooled first, or snow packing. He designed a thumper keg, a secondary chamber to refine the vapor before it hit the condenser, increasing the proof without needing a second run. It wasn't just about getting drunk. High-proof alcohol was a disinfectant. It was a solvent for medicines. It was fuel. But mostly, it was about getting drunk. Specifically, making a vodka so clean and smooth that the lords of the South would pay 10 times the price of Arbor Gold for a bottle of Northern Frost. Ned rolled up the parchment. Time to see Mycon. The smithy was louder than usual. Since the success of the glass works, Mycon had become a very popular man. He had 3 apprentices working the bellows now, and the clang of hammers was a constant song in the courtyard. When Ned entered, Mycon was inspecting a pile of iron frames for the glass casting tables. He looked tired, his face streaked with soot, but there was a pride in his posture that hadn't been there before. My lord, Mycon nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. More tools for the glass. The glass is doing fine, Ned said. He laid the new parchment on the anvil. This is something else. Mycon leaned over the drawing. He squinted. It looks like a giant onion, Mycon observed. With a long neck. It's a still, Ned explained. For making spirits. Mycon frowned. Like a moonshine cooker? The clansmen make those out of old pots. This is to a moonshine cooker what ice is to a butter knife, Ned said. He traced the lines of the diagram. It needs to be copper, Mycon. Pure copper. Beaten smooth. No leaks. The joints must be sealed tight. Mycon whistled. Copper is soft. Tricky to work large sheets of it without tearing. And expensive. Tell me how much copper you need, Ned said. I will buy the copper from White Harbor. I don't care about the cost. I care about the craftsmanship. Mycon looked at the coil, the worm. And this tube, you want me to spiral a hollow copper pipe? Yes. It needs to be long enough to cool the vapor back into liquid. Mycon scratched his beard. I can do it. Sand fill the pipe before bending it so it doesn't kink. Old trick. Exactly, Ned smiled. You're a master, Mycon. I'm a busy master, Mycon grunted. My lord, with the glass frames, the horseshoes, the repairs. I have 4 hands, counting my apprentices. You're asking for 12. Then hire 12, Ned said instantly. Mycon blinked. My lord. Expand, Ned ordered. Send word to the winter town. To Searwyn. Any man who can swing a hammer or work a bellows. I'll pay them. Build a second forge if you have to. A third. I want Winterfell to have the finest metalworking shop in the north. Ned leaned in, his voice low and intense. I need this equipment, Mycon. I want to start production before the snows deepen. Can you do it? Mycon looked at the plans. He looked at the lord who was transforming the castle into a factory. If you give me the men, Mycon said, a grin splitting his beard. I'll build you a copper dragon that spits fire water. Get the men, Ned said. And get the copper. While Mycon hammered, Ned brewed. He took over a section of the kitchens, much to Gage's confusion. You want to Boil the barley, my lord. Gage asked, holding a sack of grain. Mash it, Ned corrected. He directed the cooks to grind the barley into a coarse meal. They mixed it with hot water in massive wooden tuns, creating a thick, porridge-like slurry. Wiki, enzymes. Malted barley converts starch to sugar. Ned had ensured a portion of the barley was malted, soaked and sprouted to activate the enzymes. He stirred the mash himself, a Lord Paramount with a wooden paddle the size of a shovel, sweating in the heat of the kitchen. It smells like porridge, Ashura commented, walking in with Cregan on her hip. She wrinkled her nose. It's the precursor to magic, Ned said, wiping his forehead. Once the mash had cooled, Ned added the yeast. He didn't have modern turbo yeast, so he used the barm from the castle's ale brewing. It was slower, but it would work. He sealed the tuns, leaving only a small airlock to let the carbon dioxide escape without letting bacteria in. Now, Ned told the confused kitchen staff. We wait. Let the yeast eat. For 5 days, the tuns bubbled. The smell in the kitchen annex changed from porridge to something sharper, sourer. The smell of alcohol. Ned checked the specific gravity, by floating a calibrated wooden stick in the liquid, daily. When the bubbling stopped and the stick sank to the mark, he knew it was ready. The Washington. A weak, sour beer, about 8% alcohol. Now came the alchemy. Mycon delivered the still on the 10th day. It was a thing of beauty. A gleaming copper bulb, 5 feet wide, polished to a shine. The swan neck rose gracefully, curving down into the thumper keg, which connected to the condenser coil housed in a large wooden barrel. They set it up in the courtyard, near the well. It looks like a musical instrument, Arthur Dane said, circling the contraption. Or a torture device. Hopefully the former, Ned said. They filled the copper pot with the wash. Ned sealed the cap with a paste of flour and water, a simple dough that hardened with heat to create an airtight seal. Light the fire, Ned ordered. Benyon, now an expert fireman from his time at the glassworks, lit the coals beneath the pot. Ned watched the temperature. He didn't have a thermometer, but he used the force. He needed to hit the boiling point of ethanol, 78 degrees Celsius, without hitting the boiling point of water, 100 degrees Celsius. It was a delicate balance. Steady, Ned murmured to Benyon. Not too hot. Low and slow. They waited. The copper heated up. Then, the sound changed. A low rumble started inside the pot, like a beast waking up. It's boiling, Mycon said, stepping closer. Suddenly, the rumble turned into a violent shudder. The copper swan neck groaned. Ned! Benyon shouted. Something's blocked. The foam from the grain had risen too high, clogging the neck. Pressure was building. Fast. The copper sides of the bulb began to bulge ominously. A seam hissed, steam jetting out. Run! Mycon yelled, grabbing an apprentice and pulling him back. It's going to blow. Benyon scrambled backward, tripping over a bucket. The pot was ticking now, metal stretching under the immense pressure of the expanding vapor. If it exploded, it would send shrapnel and boiling liquid across the courtyard. Ned didn't run. He stepped forward. He reached out with his mind. Force grip. He didn't try to stop the reaction. He reinforced the container. He visualized the copper atoms. He visualized the seams holding. He clamped his will around the swelling metal, creating an invisible vice that held the structure together against the explosive force inside. The bulging stopped. The groaning metal shrieked, but held. Ned gritted his teeth, sweat popping on his forehead. It felt like holding back a landslide. The valve! Ned roared, his voice strained. Open the valve, Ben! Now! Benyon, seeing Ned standing his ground, scrambled up. He grabbed a pair of tongs and hammered the emergency pin Ned had designed on the side of the neck. Hiss! A jet of steam and foam erupted from the valve, screaming into the air. The pressure dropped instantly. Ned relaxed his mental grip. To the others, it just looked like the copper had miraculously held until the valve was opened. Gods, Benyon gasped, wiping foam from his face. That was close. Too close, Mikan agreed, eyeing the still warily. The metal. I thought it was gone. It stopped bulging. Good craftsmanship, Ned lied, patting the hot copper flank. You build them strong, Mikan. Mikan looked at the pot, confused, but took the compliment. I suppose I do. Clear the blockage, Ned ordered, his heart still racing. And let's try again. Gentler this time. 10 minutes later, a clear liquid began to trickle into the glass jar. Methanol, Ned warned. The 4 shots. Poison. He let the first jar fill up, then tossed it onto the coals. Whoosh! A blue flame exploded upward. Now, Ned said, placing a fresh jar. Now we get the hearts. The liquid that flowed next was crystal clear. It smelled clean, sharp, and sweet. Dash. The raw spirit was rough. It was essentially moonshine. Ned wasn't satisfied. He wanted vodka. He ran it through the still again. Double distillation. Then, he did something the North had never seen. He built a charcoal filter. He took birch charcoal from the wolf's wood, ground it fine, and packed it into a tall glass cylinder. He poured the spirit through the charcoal. It took days to drip through. But what came out the bottom was different. The harshness was stripped away. The fusel oils were trapped in the carbon. The liquid was impossibly clear. Smooth. Viscous. Ned tasted it. It was clean. It burned, yes, but it was a warming burn, not a scouring one. It tasted of nothing but faint grain and purity. Winter's breath, Ned named it. Dash. Ned mobilized the glassworks. I need bottles, Ned told his glass team. Not sheets. Bottles. Square ones. Thick glass. They made molds. They blew the glass into the iron forms. The result was a heavy, square bottle that looked like a brick of ice. It was distinctive. It looked expensive. They filled 50 bottles. They corked them with wax. Ned held one up to the light. The clear spirit inside magnified the world like a lens. It looks like water, Ashura said, examining a bottle. It's dangerous water, Ned warned. Best alcohol in the world. It doesn't spoil. It doesn't freeze. Dash. That night, in the solar, Ned poured a small glass for himself, Benyon, and Arthur. We have 50 bottles, Ned said. It's a start. What's the plan? Arthur asked, swirling the liquid. We send a crate to King's Landing, Ned said. A gift for the king. Robert will drink it, love it, and tell everyone in the court. The demand will create itself. And the rest? Benyon asked. We sell it in White Harbor to the Bravasi merchants, Ned said. They appreciate purity. Once they taste this, they'll pay gold for it. Real gold. Ned took a sip. It was crisp, cold, and fiery all at once. It's the fuel, Ned said, looking at the map of the north on his wall. This pays for the roads. This pays for the walls. This pays for the future. You're turning Winterfell into a merchant's guild, Benyon teased. I'm turning it into a powerhouse, Ned corrected. Winter is coming. And I intend to buy it off. He set the glass down. The square bottle glinted in the firelight, looking like a block of ice that held a fire inside. To the north, Ned toasted. To the north, Benyon agreed. To the north, Arthur agreed. Chapter 35, the viper in the snow. The courtyard of Winterfell was a flurry of activity. Roderick Castle stood by a heavy wagon, checking the straps on the crates. He looked skeptical. To him, the square glass bottles inside were just fancy moonshine, but Ned insisted they were the future of the North's economy. "Handle them like eggs," Ned ordered the loaders. "If one breaks, that's a gold dragon wasted." He handed a sealed scroll to Roderick. "For Lord Manderley," Ned said. "Tell him to taste it. Tell him to serve it cold. And tell him to find buyers in Bravos. They like their spirits clear and strong." He handed a second scroll, sealed with the dire wolf in white wax. "And this is for the king. Tell Lord Monderl to send 10 crates on the next ship to King's Landing and the letter as well. Make sure the captain is loyal. I don't want Robert's gift ending up in a pirate's belly." Roderick nodded, tucking the scrolls into his belt. "It will be done, my lord. Though I still say it tastes like fire." "It tastes like profit," Ned corrected. "Safe journey, Roderick." The wagon rolled out of the Hunter's Gate, flanked by a dozen guards. Ned watched it go. The first export of the new North. If it worked, they would have gold to pave the King's Road. If it failed, well, at least the Night's Watch would be warm this winter. 2 days later, the horns on the walls blew again. It wasn't a traitor. It wasn't a bannerman. Ned stood on the battlements, looking south. A column of riders was approaching up the King's Road. They moved fast, their horses kicking up snow. Their banners were not grey or white or black. They were orange. A red sun pierced by a golden spear. "House Martell." "They made good time," Arthur Dane said, appearing beside Ned. The Sword of the Morning wore his grey cloak, but dawn was on his back. "Grief has a way of speeding a man's journey," Ned said. He looked down at the courtyard. Elia Martell was there. She wore a heavy cloak of wolf fur over her Dornish silks, shivering slightly in the cold, but her eyes were fixed on the gate. She looked terrified and hopeful all at once. Rhaenys stood beside her, holding the hand of Willa. The little girl looked confused, sensing the tension but not understanding it. "Let's go down," Ned said. The gates opened. The Dornish riders poured into the courtyard. They looked out of place in the snow-swarthy, dark-haired, dressed in silks and light leathers that must have been freezing. Their horses were sand steeds, beautiful and nervous, prancing on the ice. At the front rode a man who looked like danger personified. Prince Oberyn Martell. The Red Viper. He vaulted from his saddle before his horse had even stopped. He was dressed in snakeskin scales and orange silk, a spear strapped to his saddle. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were black fire. "Elia." He didn't wait for guest rights. He didn't wait for introductions. He ran to his sister. Elia let out a sob and rushed to him. They collided in the center of the yard. Oberyn caught her, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her neck. He held her as if he were trying to weld her broken pieces back together with the force of his arms. "I'm here," Oberyn choked out, his voice thick with tears. "I'm here, Elia. I swear it." "Oberyn," she wept. "You came." "I was in Essos," he said, pulling back to look at her face, checking for injuries, for scars. "I was in Lys when the Raven came. I rode day and night. I killed 3 horses. I would have killed 1,000. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "When I heard about the sack, about the mountain." "I'm safe," Elia promised, framing his face with her hands. "I am safe." Oberyn looked down. Rhaenys was hiding behind Willa's skirts, peeking out at this strange, intense man. "And you," Oberyn said, dropping to one knee. He held out his hands. "Little son. Do you remember me?" Rhaenys hesitated. Then she saw the smile on his face, a smile that was all warmth and no danger. She stepped forward. "Uncle Oberyn?" she asked. "Yes," Oberyn said, his voice breaking. "Uncle Oberyn." She hugged him. Oberyn closed his eyes, holding the last pieces of his family against the cold of the world. Behind him, a woman dismounted. Elaria Sand. She was beautiful, exotic, and looked ready to stab anyone who interrupted the reunion. She walked over and joined the embrace, kissing Elia's cheek and stroking Rhaenys's hair. Ned watched from the steps of the keep. He felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was to lose family. He knew what it was to get them back. Oberyn stood up. He kept one arm around Elia, the other hand resting on Rhaenys's head. He turned to face Ned. The emotion vanished from his face, replaced by a mask of polite, lethal courtesy. The Viper was back. "Lord Stark," Oberyn said. Ned walked down the steps. "Prince Oberyn. Welcome to Winterfell." Oberyn studied him. He looked for the savage Northman, the friend of the usurper, the man who had occupied the capital. Instead, he saw a quiet man with sad eyes and a stillness that felt like a coiled spring. "You saved them," Oberyn said. "It wasn't a question. I did what was right," Ned replied. "Tywin Lannister wanted them dead," Oberyn said, his voice dropping. "He sent his dogs. You killed the dogs." "They were mad dogs," Ned said simply. "They needed putting down." Oberyn nodded slowly. "Dorne owes you a debt, Eddard Stark. A debt of blood and life. We do not forget." "There is no debt," Ned said. "Family is everything. I would hope you would do the same for mine." Oberyn looked at Ashura Dane, who was standing beside Ned, holding Cregan. His eyes softened. "Ashura," Oberyn said, bowing his head. "The stars have been dim without you in the south." "Oberyn," Ashura smiled, though it was guarded. "You look tired." "I am tired," Oberyn admitted. "I am tired of death." His gaze shifted. It landed on Arthur Dane. The warmth evaporated. Arthur stood tall, meeting the prince's gaze. He knew what Oberyn saw. He saw the white cloak, even if Arthur wasn't wearing it. He saw the man who had helped Rhaegar take Lyanna. He saw the man who had guarded the tower while Elia suffered in the capital. Oberyn took a step toward Arthur. His hand twitched toward his dagger. "Dane," Oberyn said, his voice cold. "Prince Oberyn," Arthur replied evenly. "You were his friend," Oberyn accused. "His shadow. You helped him destroy my sister's life." "Oberyn, don't," Elia said sharply, stepping between them. "Not here. Not now. He left you." Oberyn shouted, his control slipping. "He stood by while Rhaegar chased a wolf girl and left you to the Mad King." "He followed orders," Elia said. "Just as you would have. I would have gutted Rhaegar before I let him dishonor you." Oberyn snarled. "And then you would be dead," Arthur said quietly. "And Elia would be alone." Oberyn glared at him. The tension in the courtyard was razor thin. Benyon Stark had his hand on his sword hilt, ready to intervene. "Enough," Ned said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of the force. It was a command. "The war is over, Prince Oberyn," Ned said, stepping into the space between the Dornishmen and the night. "We are all survivors here. We all have regrets. There is a time and place for everything." He looked Oberyn in the eye. "Arthur Dane is Rhaenys's sworn sword. And I would prefer not to fight the man whose sister I just saved." Oberyn looked at Ned. He saw the steel in the Stark's spine. He saw the way Ashura moved closer to Arthur. He saw the way Elia looked at Ned with respect. The Viper relaxed. He let out a breath. "You have guest rights," Ned said, offering a small bowl of bread and salt that a steward had brought forward. "Bread and salt." No harm shall come to you here. Oberyn looked at the bowl. He took a piece of bread, dipped it in the salt, and ate it. Bread and salt, Oberyn said. I accept your protection, Lord Stark. He looked at Arthur one last time. We will talk later, Sword of the Morning. When the wine is flowing. I look forward to it, Arthur said stoically. Come, Ned said, gesturing to the keep. The rooms are prepared. The hot springs are warm. You must want to wash the road off you. I want to wash the world off me, Oberyn muttered. That evening, the Great Hall of Winterfell was livelier than it had been in months. The presence of the Dornish brought a splash of color to the grey stone. They sat at the high table, shivering slightly in the draught, but eating with gusto. Ned sat in the center, Ashura to his right, Oberyn to his left. Elia sat beside her brother, looking more at peace than she had since arriving. So, Oberyn said, swirling his wine. You keep them here. As hostages. As guests, Ned corrected. Robert wanted them dead. Jonathan wanted them exiled. I wanted them safe. Safe in the wolf's den, Oberyn mused. It is a clever cage, Stark. You bind Dorne to the north. I bind Dorne to peace, Ned said. If Elia is here, Sunspear will not rise. If Sunspear does not rise, Robert does not march south. No more blood. And if Robert demands their heads? Oberyn asked, his dark eyes sharp. Then he comes through me, Ned said simply. Oberyn studied him. You mean that? I do. You are a strange man, Eddard Stark, Oberyn said. You won a war and took no crown. You hold the keys to the kingdom and you hide in the snow. What do you want? I want my people to survive the winter, Ned said. And I want my children to grow up without fear. He looked down the table. Cregan was sitting with Benyon, laughing. Jon was in a cradle near Ashura. Oberyn followed his gaze. Your son? Oberyn asked, looking at Cregan. My heir, Ned said. And the other one? Oberyn pointed his fork at the cradle. Ned didn't flinch. My natural son. Jon. Oberyn raised an eyebrow. You have been busy. The Honourable Ned Stark, fathering bastards. War changes men, Ned said, repeating the line he had given Robert. Oberyn looked at Jon. He looked at the dark hair, the grey eyes. He looks like you, Oberyn noted. He is a Stark, Ned said firmly. Oberyn smirked. Well, in Dorne, we do not hide our natural children. We celebrate them. You should bring him south one day. Let him taste a lemon. Perhaps, Ned said. The feast continued. Oberyn regaled the table with stories of Essos of the fighting pits of Mirian, the poisons of Lys, the pillow houses of Tyrosh. Benyon listened with wide eyes. Even Arthur seemed to relax, listening to tales of a world far away from his failures. And this drink? Oberyn asked, holding up a glass of winter's breath. It is aggressive. It's vodka, Ned said. Keeps you warm. It strips the paint off a boat, Oberyn laughed. I like it. I'll take 10 casks back to Sunspear. My brother Doran needs to loosen up. After the feast, when the hall had cleared, Oberyn and Ned remained by the fire. Elia told me, Oberyn said quietly, staring into the flames. About Aegon. I'm sorry, Ned said. She said he died before the sack, Oberyn said. That she switched him. She did. It was clever, Oberyn admitted. Desperate, but clever. And the boy who died? An innocent, Ned said. He has a stone in the crypts of the September, but he deserved better. Oberyn gripped his wine cup. I want to kill them, Stark. Tywin. The mountain's ghost. Everyone who touched her. The mountain is dead, Ned reminded him. Lorch is dead. Ares is dead. Tywin lives, Oberyn hissed. He gave the order. He did, Ned agreed. And one day, he will answer for it. But not today. Today, we need peace. Elia needs peace. Oberyn looked at Ned. You hate him too. I despise him, Ned said coldly. But I will not start a war that kills thousands just to satisfy my anger. We play the long game, Prince Oberyn. We build. We grow strong. And when the time is right, justice will find Tywin Lannister. Oberyn smiled. It was a dangerous smile. I like the long game, Oberyn said. Vipers are patient. He stood up. Thank you, Lord Stark. For everything. Dorne stands with you. If you ever need spears, you have but to ask. And if you ever need snow, Ned smiled, you know where to find us. Oberyn laughed and walked away, his orange silks swaying. Ned watched him go. He had secured the south. He had neutralized the Dornish threat not with hostages, but with friendship. He looked at the fire. One step closer, Ned thought. The realm is stabilizing. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the snow was falling softly. Peace had come to Winterfell. But in the back of his mind, the force whispered of the cold to come. Rest now, Ned told himself. Tomorrow, we build the wall. Chapter 36, The Shield of the Realms. The wind from the north was biting, carrying the scent of pine and snow, but the riders approaching Winterfell seemed immune to it. They wore black heavy wool, boiled leather, and ring-mail painted with soot. They moved with the grim purpose of men who had forgotten the warmth of summer. Ned Stark stood in the courtyard, his breath misting in the air. Beside him stood Benyon, looking eager, and Arthur Dane, observing quietly. They look heavy, Arthur commented, watching the column of 20 riders pass through the Hunter's Gate. They carry a heavy burden, Ned said. At the head of the column rode Lord Commander Corgyle. He was a Dornishman of House Corgyle, a man of sandstone who had traded the heat of the desert for the ice of the wall. His skin was leathery, his hair white, and his eyes were dark and hard. He rode a black Garin that looked vicious. Ned stepped forward as Corgyle dismounted. The Lord Commander moved stiffly, his joints complaining in the cold, but he refused the help of his stewards. Lord Stark, Corgyle rasped. His voice was deep and rough. Lord Commander, Ned replied, bowing his head. Welcome to Winterfell. He signaled a servant, who brought forward the traditional bowl of bread and salt. Guest rights, Ned offered. Bread and salt. No harm shall come to you here. Corgyle took a piece of bread, dipped it in the salt, and ate it. Bread and salt. I accept your protection, Lord Stark. Though the wall protects itself. The wall protects us all, Ned said. But even a wall needs a foundation. Corgyle looked around the courtyard. He saw the repairs, the smoke rising from the new glassworks, the bustle of the servants. He saw Arthur Dane in his grey cloak and his eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. A man of the watch saw many things and spoke of few. You have food prepared? Corgyle asked. My men are hungry. The Great Hall is ready for your brothers, Ned said. But for us? I thought we might speak first. In my solar. There are matters that cannot wait for a feast. Corgyle studied him. He saw the seriousness in the young lord's face. Business before pleasure, Corgyle agreed. Lead the way. Ned's solar was warm. The room was cluttered with maps of the north, architectural drawings, and stacks of ledgers. Ned gestured to the chairs by the hearth. Corgyle sat, stretching his legs toward the fire. You keep a warm room, Stark, Corgyle noted. Warmer than Castle Black. I intend to change that, Ned said. He walked to the sideboard. A square, heavy glass bottle sat there. The liquid inside was crystal clear. "You look thirsty, Lord Commander," Ned said. "The road is dusty," Corgile said. Ned poured 2 cups. He handed one to Corgile. The Lord Commander looked at the liquid. It looked like water. It smelled clean. He took a large gulp. Corgile's eyes went wide. He froze. Then, he gagged. "HKKKHH." The cough exploded out of him. He slammed the cup down on the table, clutching his throat, his face turning red. He wheezed, slapping his chest. "Gods!" Corgile rasped, staring at the cup. "What is this?" "Not poison," Ned said calmly, taking a small sip of his own. "Medicine. And fuel." "It burns," Corgile accused. "It does," Ned agreed. "Wait a moment." Corgile wiped his mouth. The coughing subsided. A warmth began in his stomach and spread outward. It rushed into his cold fingers and toes. It flushed his skin. The ache in his joints seemed to dull. Corgile took a deep breath. The cold of the room seemed to recede. "I feel warm," Corgile said. "We call it winter's breath," Ned said. "Distilled from northern grain. Filtered through charcoal. It doesn't freeze. It doesn't spoil. And it warms a man quickly." Corgile looked at the cup again. He picked it up warily. He took a small sip. It still burned, but the sensation was bracing now. "Strong," Corgile admitted. "Stronger than Dornish Red." "Strongest alcohol there is right now," Ned said. "It cleans wounds, too. And if you spill it on a fire, it flares." "You made this." "We are making it," Ned said. "Barrels of it. I intend to sell it to the free cities." He leaned forward. "And I intend to send 50 crates a month to the wall." Corgile lowered the cup. The politician replaced the freezing old man. 50 crates, Corgile repeated. "That is a lot of warmth. What do you want for it, Stark?" "I want to make a deal," Ned said. "A trade." "Before we trade," Ned said, moving to the large map of the north on his wall, "tell me the truth. Not the report you send to the king. The truth. What is the state of the watch?" Corgile stood up and walked to the map. He traced the line of the wall with a calloused finger. "We are dying, Lord Stark," Corgile said bluntly. "Slowly. But surely." He pointed to the castles. "We have 19 strongholds along the wall. 3 are manned. Castle Black, the Shadow Tower, and Eastwatch by the sea. The rest are ruins. Manpower. Less than 1,000, Corgile admitted. And the quality, poachers, rapers, and third sons who annoyed their fathers. We have few knights. Fewer builders. The wall weeps, and we don't have the men to repair the stone. And the wildlings. They are getting bolder," Corgile said. "If they hit us in force, we can hold, but we will bleed." Ned nodded. "You need men," Ned said. "You need steel. You need food. We need everything," Corgile said. "The South forgets us. They think we are a penal colony. Even the North, the lords give us scraps." "The North has been poor," Ned said. "But that is changing." He tapped the map, his finger landing on the vast stretch of land south of the wall. "The gift," Ned said. Corgile stiffened. "Brandon's gift. And the new gift. Queen Ali's Anne doubled our lands." "And what do you do with them?" Ned asked. "We hold them," Corgile said defensively. "They are ours." "They are empty," Ned corrected. "I rode through them on my way to the wall last year. Miles of good soil, overgrown with weeds. Villages abandoned because the wildlings raid them and the watch cannot protect them. We patrol." "You patrol the wall," Ned said. "You do not patrol the gift." You can't. You don't have the men. Ned looked Corgile in the eye. The gift is a wasted resource, Lord Commander. It yields no taxes. It grows no food. It is a buffer zone that buffers nothing. It is our land, Corgile insisted. You want to take it back? The dragons gave it to us. I want to make it work for you, Ned said. He walked back to his desk and picked up a scroll. It was the agreement he had drafted with Jonaran and Robert. I have spoken with the king, Ned said. And the hand? You went over my head. I went to get permission to offer you a fortune, Ned said. He laid the scroll on the table. Here is the proposal. The new gift, the 25 leagues given by Alizan, returns to Winterfell. It becomes part of the North again. Corgile opened his mouth to shout, but Ned raised a hand. In exchange, Ned continued, House Stark assumes responsibility for its defense. I will settle the mountain clans there, the Wools, the Littles, the Norais. Men who know how to fight wildlings. I will build holdfasts. I will pave roads. And the Watch loses its land, Corgile said. The Watch gains a treasury, Ned said. He pointed to a clause in the document. The harvest. The wool. The timber. Every resource generated by the new gift, it doesn't go to me. It doesn't go to the Iron Throne. Ned looked at Corgile. It goes to you. Directly to Castle Black. Corgile froze. He looked at the scroll. He read the words. You would farm it for us? Corgile asked. You would protect it, manage it, and give us the profit. I would, Ned said. Why? Corgile asked. Why do the work if you don't keep the gold? Because I don't need the gold, Ned said. I have glass. I have vodka. I will have trade with Bravos in future. He leaned in. I need the wall to stand, Lord Commander. I need the Watch to be strong. If the wildlings break through, they burn my lands. If, other things, come, they kill my people. Ned's voice dropped. Winter is coming, Corgile. A long winter. I want the granaries of Castle Black full. I want your men in warm cloaks, drinking this spirit, holding swords that don't break. I want the ruined castles rebuilt. With the resources from the gift? Corgile asked. With the resources, Ned nodded. And with more. He outlined the rest of the plan. We will need masons to repair the Shadow Tower. Shipwrights to Eastwatch to build a patrol fleet for the Bay of Seals. And I will send men. Men. The mountain clans have too many sons, Ned said. If I settle them in the gift, the second and third sons will look to the wall. It's a short ride. An honorable profession. I will encourage them. I will give a bounty to any family that sends a son to the Watch. Corgile sat back in his chair. He picked up the cup of vodka. It was an impossible offer. It was giving up sovereignty for survival. Alizan had given them land they couldn't use. Stark was offering to turn that land into a lifeline. My brothers will complain, Corgile said. They will say we are giving up our rights. Tell them they can eat rights in the winter, Ned said. Or they can eat bread and beef grown in the gift. And the king agrees. Robert signed it, Ned said. He doesn't care about the land. He cares that I stop asking him for money. Corgile chuckled dryly. He took a drink. You are a strange Stark, Corgile said. Your father, he respected the Watch, but he kept his distance. You want to rebuild us. I want a shield that works, Ned said. And the Brandon's gift? Corgile asked. The original land. You keep that, Ned said. Direct control. But I will send advisors to help you farm it better. We have developed techniques. Glass gardens. Glass gardens at the wall. Why not? Ned asked. You have ice. Why not have fire too? We can build them. Grow vegetables in the shadow of the ice. Corgile shook his head. It sounds like a dream. It's a plan, Ned corrected. Corgile looked at the scroll again. He looked at the map. If I agree, Corgile said. When does it start? The moment you sign, Ned said. I have the littles ready to move. They can be breaking ground before the first snow settles. Corgile sighed. I will speak to my brothers. But, you make a hard case to refuse, Lord Stark. Good, Ned said. Later that evening, the Great Hall was filled with the Black Brothers and the household of Winterfell. It was a strange mix. The grim men of the watch sitting beside the Stark guards. But the food was good: roast venison, root vegetables, and hot bread, and the vodka flowed freely. Ned watched from the high table. He saw Benyon sitting with a group of rangers. They were laughing, telling stories of ranging beyond the wall. Benyon listened, his face lit with interest, but there was no longing in his eyes. Corgile sat on Ned's right. The Lord Commander was on his third cup of winter's breath, and his cheeks were flushed. You're Smith, Corgile said. Mykin. He tells me you designed the still yourself. I dabble, Ned said. He also says you designed the glassworks, Corgile continued. And the bridge at the Twins. I read a lot, Ned said. You have a mind for stone and iron, Corgile noted. He looked down the table at Benyon. Your brother, he listens well. He is of the first men. The watch could use a Stark. It has been a long time since we had one on the wall. Ned watched Benyon. The boy looked up, catching Corgile's gaze. The watch is an honorable calling, Ned said carefully. But Benyon has a place here. Does he? Corgile asked. He leaned forward, catching Benyon's eye across the noise of the feast. Benyon Stark. You are young, strong. Have you thought of the Black? The wall needs men like you. Officers. Leaders. Benyon set down his cup. He looked at Corgile, the black-clad commander offering him a life of duty and hardship. Then his gaze shifted. He looked to the corner of the hall where Anna sat with the children. She was holding little John, pointing out the banners on the wall to Cregan. She looked safe. She looked home. Benyon remembered the promise he had made to himself when she returned from the south. He remembered the vow in the God's Wood. He turned back to Corgile. His face was calm, his decision made long ago. Thank you, Lord Commander, Benyon said, his voice respectful but firm. It is an honor to be asked. But my place is here. Winterfell has a lord, Corgile pointed out, gesturing to Ned. Winterfell needs more than a lord, Benyon said. It needs a pack. My brother has a kingdom to build. My family needs me. I will serve the north from here. Corgile studied the boy. He saw the resolve in Benyon's face, the anchor that held him to this castle. As you say, Corgile said, turning back to his drink. A man must choose his own path. Ned let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Benyon stayed. The pack remained whole. Ashura laughed from his left. My Lord Commander, my husband tells me the wall is a sight to behold. It is, my lady, Corgile said. 700 feet of ice. It weeps in the sun and sings in the wind. It is lonely. But it is magnificent. Perhaps we will visit, Ashura said. When the summer comes. You would be welcome, Corgile said. The next morning, Corgile signed the agreement. It was done in the solar, witnessed by Maester Luwin and Arthur Dane. To the future of the watch, Corgile said, pressing his seal into the black wax. To the shield of the realms, Ned replied, adding the direwolf seal in white. Corgile rolled up his copy. He looked at Ned. You are planning something, Stark, Corgile said. This, this is preparation. You are arming us. You are feeding us. You are rebuilding the forts. I am, Ned admitted. For what? Corgile asked. Wildlings are a nuisance, but they aren't an army that requires 20 castles. Ned walked to the window. He looked north. For winter, Ned said simply. The long one. Corgile snorted. Tales for children. Perhaps, Ned said. But if the tales are wrong, we have a strong wall and a prosperous north. If the tales are right, we survive. Corgile stared at him. He saw the shadow in Ned's eyes. You Starks, Corgile muttered. You always look at the snow and see monsters. And you crows always look at the wall and see a job, Ned countered. I'm just giving you the tools to do it. Corgile nodded. He tugged on his gloves. Send the vodka, Lord Stark. And the settlers. We will be waiting. Ned walked them to the gate. He watched the black column ride out, heading back to the frozen end of the world. They were stronger now. Or they would be. Chapter 37, Trade Deals. 2 moons had passed since the Red Viper had ridden into Winterfell, and in that time, the castle had changed. It felt less like a fortress at the end of the world and more like a hub. Ned sat in his solar, the desk cluttered with parchments, samples of grain, and small vials of distilled spirits. Oberyn Martell sat opposite him, looking relaxed in a chair that was clearly designed for someone stiffer. He wore a heavy fur cloak over his orange silks, a concession to the northern chill that he had finally stopped complaining about mostly. You want to sell me, Winter, Oberyn said, arching an eyebrow. I want to sell you ice, Ned corrected. He pushed a piece of parchment across the table. It was a technical drawing, precise and detailed. The concept is simple, Ned explained. Dorne is hot. Food spoils. Wine turns to vinegar. People suffer in the summer heat. In the north, we have ice that lasts forever. I propose an export trade. Oberyn laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. You intend to ship frozen water halfway across the world? It will melt before it passes the neck, Stark. Not with these, Ned tapped the drawing. The diagram showed the cross-section of a ship's hold. It was lined with double walls, the gap filled with sawdust and straw. Insulation, Ned said. We cut the ice from the frozen lakes. We pack it in sawdust. We load it into insulated holds. It loses maybe 10% of its mass during the voyage to White Harbor, and another 10% on the sea. But 80% arrives in Sun's Pair. Oberyn stopped laughing. He looked at the drawing more closely. He was a man of poisons and fighting, but he was also a man of science, trained at the Citadel for a time. He understood the principle. And once it arrives? Oberyn asked. It melts on the docks. Not if you build these, Ned slid a second drawing across. It was a design for an ice house. A deep, subterranean chamber with thick stone walls and a drainage system for the meltwater. You dig deep, Ned explained. You line it with straw. You stack the ice blocks tight. The cold mass keeps itself frozen. You can store ice for months, even in the Dornish heat. Imagine it, Oberyn. Chilled wine in the height of summer. Fresh fish transported inland without salting. Sorbet for the princess. Oberyn looked at Ned. The amusement was gone, replaced by calculation. You are serious, Oberyn murmured. You have actually calculated the heat decay. I have, Ned said. It works. And what do you want for this miracle? Sand steeds, Ned said promptly. We need to improve our cavalry. Northern horses are strong, but slow. I want breeding stock. Stallions and mares. Done, Oberyn said. We have horses to spare. But ice alone won't fill your treasury. No, Ned agreed. But this might. He reached under the desk and pulled out 2 new bottles. One was square, filled with an amber liquid. The other was round, filled with a deep, ruby-red spirit. We discussed the vodka, Ned said. Winter's breath. It's good for the cold, but Dorn doesn't need warming. So I made something else. He poured a small measure of the amber liquid. Whiskey, Ned said. It has the smoke of the north and the sweetness of the grain. Oberyn sniffed it. It smells like a hearth fire. He tasted it. The flavor was complex vanilla, oak, peat. It was smoother than the vodka, richer. Impressive, Oberyn admitted. And the red one? Brandy, Ned said. He poured the ruby liquid. Oberyn tasted the brandy. His eyes widened. It was sweet, fiery, and potent. This, Oberyn said, holding up the glass, would sell in Lys. It would sell in Tyrosh. It would sell in Sun's Pair. Then we have a trade, Ned said. I send you ice and whiskey. You send me horses, citrus, and wine. Oberyn shook his head, a look of grudging respect on his face. You are turning the north into a merchant empire, Stark. My brother Doran will be pleased. He likes gold almost as much as he likes peace. There is one more thing, Ned said. He leaned back, his expression turning thoughtful. I have heard tales, Ned began, of a drink from the Far East. From Yeti. A black, bitter brew that wakes the mind. Oberyn frowned, searching his memory. You mean, kawa? Coffee, Ned said, using the word from his old life before correcting himself. Yes. The bean juice. I have tasted it, Oberyn nodded. In Volantis. A merchant from Yeti brewed it. It is, an acquired taste. Bitter as gall, but it makes the heart race. I want it, Ned said. I want the beans. The seeds. To grow. Oberyn laughed. Stark, you cannot grow Yeti plants in the snow. Even your glass gardens have limits. Not here, Ned said. In Dorne. He pulled out a map of Dorne. He pointed to the Green Blood River. The climate is right, Ned said. Hot. Humid near the river. If you plant these beans along the banks, they will thrive. You could be the only source of this drink in Westeros. Oberyn looked at the map. And you would buy it. I would buy every sack you produced, Ned promised. And rice? Oberyn asked, remembering an earlier conversation. Rice needs water, Ned said. The neck has water. The reeds can grow it. If you can get me the seed grain from the east. Oberyn sat back. He looked at the maps, the drawings, the bottles. I came here expecting a grim warden and a frozen castle, Oberyn said. I found a man who wants to reshape the world. The world needs reshaping, Ned said. The dragons broke it. We have to fix it. I will speak to the merchant, Oberyn promised. I will send you the rice. And I will speak to Doran about the sour beans. He stood up. You give me hope, Eddard Stark. That is a rare gift. Dash. Leaving the solar, Ned and Oberyn walked through the great keep toward the nursery. The sound of childish laughter echoed down the stone corridor. They stopped at the door to the family's private solar. It was open, letting the warmth of the hearth spill out. Inside, a scene of domestic chaos was unfolding. Rhaenys was on her hands and knees on the rush-covered floor, stalking a target. Her target was Balerion, the black kitten she had refused to leave behind in King's Landing. The cat, now growing into a lanky adolescent, was hiding under a heavy oak chair, his green eyes gleaming in the shadows. I see you, Balerion. Rhaenys whispered loudly, wiggling her hips. I am a dragon. I'm going to eat you. Next to her, Cregan Stark was trying to participate. He was still unsteady on his feet compared to the 3-year-old princess, but his enthusiasm was unmatched. He toddled after her, holding a wooden spoon like a sword. Cat! Cregan shouted. Cat! Cat! Balryan, deciding discretion was the better part of valor, darted out from under the chair. He streaked across the room, a black blur. Rhenus squealed and scrambled after him. Cregan tried to run, tripped over his own feet, and landed on his padded bottom with a thump. He looked ready to cry for a second, his lower lip trembling. Rhenus stopped. She turned back to him. Up, Cregan, she commanded, sounding very much like a queen. Warriors don't cry. She offered him her hand. Cregan took it, hauling himself up. He beamed at her. Up. Let's get him, Rhenus whispered conspiratorially. Together, the dragon and the wolf resumed the hunt for the cat. Oberyn leaned against the door frame, watching them. The hard lines of his face softened. The Red Viper, the man who poisoned his blades and slept with daggers, looked simply like an uncle. She is happy, Oberyn murmured. She is safe here, Ned said. She will not be a stranger in a strange land, Ned promised. She will be family. Oberyn watched Rhenus tackle Cregan in a hug when the toddler finally managed to catch the cat, who had actually just stopped to lick his paw, bored with the game. Family, Oberyn repeated. He looked at Ned. You keep your promises, Stark. That is a dangerous habit. It's the only habit worth keeping, Ned said. Dash. The courtyard was crowded. The Dornish escort was mounted and ready, their banners snapping in the cold wind. Oberyn stood by his horse. He wore his heavy cloak, but his helm was off. Elia stood before him. She looked healthier than she had in months. The northern air, or perhaps the safety, had put color back in her cheeks. Rhenus clung to her hand, bundled in a miniature fur cloak that made her look like a tiny bear. You have to go? Rhenus asked, looking up at her uncle. I do, little son, Oberyn said, crouching down. Dorn needs me. Your uncle Doran worries if I am gone too long. He thinks I am starting wars. Are you? Rhenus asked innocently. Oberyn grinned. Not today. Today, I am just a messenger. He kissed her forehead. Be good. Listen to your mother. And don't let the Stark boys push you around. I pushed Cregan yesterday, Rhenus stated proudly. He fell down. Good girl, Oberyn laughed. He stood up and turned to Elia. The humor faded from his face. Are you sure? Oberyn asked quietly. I can take you. I can put you in a litter. We can be in Sunspear in a month. You would be safe there. I am safe here, Elia said. And if I leave? Robert will come for us. He will demand us back. Here, we are guests. In Dorne, we would be rebels. She touched his arm. Eddard Stark keeps his word, Oberyn. He treats us with honor. Ashura is a sister to me. And the children, they are happy. Oberyn looked at Ned, who was standing a respectful distance away near the gate. He is a good man, Oberyn admitted, the words tasting strange on his tongue. For a Stark. He is the best of them, Elia said. She hugged her brother. It was a long, fierce embrace. Tell Doran I am well, she whispered. Tell him not to plot. Not yet. Let us live. I will tell him, Oberyn promised. He pulled away. He walked over to Ned. Lord Stark. Prince Oberyn. They shook hands. It was a firm grip, sealing the deals made in the solar. The ice houses, Oberyn said. I will build the first one in the water gardens. If it works, you will have your horses. It will work, Ned said. And the whiskey, Oberyn added, tapping a saddlebag where a bottle was stashed. This is dangerous. Only if you drink it all at once, Ned warned. Oberyn vaulted into his saddle. He looked back at his sister and niece one last time. He raised his hand in farewell. The Red Viper turned his horse and led his column out of the gate, heading south toward the warmth, carrying the secrets of the ice with him. Ned watched them go until the orange banners disappeared into the wolf's wood. "He liked you," Ashura said, coming up beside him. "He didn't try to stab me," Ned said. "I count that as a victory." "He respects you," Ashura corrected. "Oberyn values intelligence. And he sees what you are doing." "And what am I doing?" "You're building a kingdom," Ashura said softly. "Without a crown." Ned looked at the castle around him. The smoke from the glassworks. The repairs on the walls. The sounds of the household. "I'm just building a home," Ned said. He put his arm around his wife. "Come on. We have kingdom to plan." Chapter 38, The Northern Spirit. Waylee Manderley stood in the anteroom of the Great Hall, a linen handkerchief clutched in his thick hand. He dabbed at his forehead, his neck, and the collar of his teal velvet doublet. King's Landing was stifling. It was a wet, oppressive heat that clung to the skin and made every breath feel heavy. Waylee had arrived at the river gate yesterday evening, after a long and mostly uneventful voyage down the narrow sea. He had spent the night in an upscale inn near the docks, securing his cargo and ensuring his men were rested. Today, he had dressed in his finest clothes to represent his father, Lord Wyman Manderley, and his liege lord, Eddard Stark. But the southern climate cared little for northern finery. Waylee was a large man, broad-shouldered and thick around the middle, and the heat was actively punishing him for it. He looked around the anteroom. It was crowded with lesser lords, wealthy merchants, and hedge knights, all waiting for a chance to present their petitions to the new king. The air smelled of sour wine, heavy perfumes, and unwashed bodies. Waylee missed the crisp, cold air of White Harbor. He missed the smell of the sea salt freezing on the docks. Most of all, he missed the quiet efficiency that had recently taken hold of the north. Over the past moon, Lord Stark had transformed Winterfell and the surrounding lands. The rumors of his impossible work ethic were not exaggerated. Waylee had seen the new glassworks with his own eyes. He had tasted the strange, clear spirits that poured from the copper stills. The north was waking up, stretching its limbs, and preparing for the winter with a focused intensity. Waylee was here to prove that progress to the south. "Sir Waylee of House Manderley," a herald called out. The voice cut through the murmur of the waiting crowd. Waylee straightened his posture. He tucked the damp handkerchief into his sleeve. He signaled to the 4 stout guards from White Harbor who accompanied him. They fell into step behind him, their silver tridents gleaming on their chest plates. 2 massive oaken doors, banded with bronze, were pushed open by guards wearing the golden cloaks of the city watch. Waylee stepped through the doorway and into the throne room. The great hall of the Red Keep was vast. High windows let in shafts of sunlight that illuminated the dust dancing in the air. The dragon skulls that had once lined the walls were gone, replaced by heavy tapestries depicting hunting scenes and the crowned stag of House Baratheon. At the far end of the hall stood the Iron Throne. It was a jagged, asymmetrical hazard of melted swords and sharp edges. It looked uncomfortable, dangerous, and completely uninviting. Sitting upon it was King Robert Baratheon. Robert did not appear a man who had recently won a kingdom. He looked miserable. He wore a tunic of heavy black cloth embroidered with gold thread, and the crown of Aegon the Conqueror rested somewhat crookedly on his dark hair. He was shifting his weight constantly, trying to find a comfortable position on the twisted steel blades, and failing. He rubbed his temples, a clear sign of a headache, likely the result of a long night of drinking. Beside the throne, standing on the dais, was the Queen. Cersei Lannister wore a gown of crimson silk, her golden hair woven into intricate braids. She stood perfectly still, her face drawn in bored superiority. She looked down at the petitioners with cool, detached disdain. Below the dais, Jon Arryn stood behind a small table. The hand of the king looked exhausted, holding a stack of parchments and gesturing for the scribes to record the decrees. A few other lords of the small council and favored courtiers stood along the walls, whispering to each other, playing the endless game of observation and advantage. Wei Li walked the length of the hall. His boots echoed loudly on the polished stone. He kept his eyes forward, ignoring the stares of the southern lords who judged his size and his northern attire. He reached the base of the Iron Throne. Sir Baristan Selmy stood at the bottom of the steps. The Lord Commander of the King's Guard wore his white enameled armor and a pristine white cloak. He looked sharp, alert, and wholly dedicated to his duty, a stark contrast to the king he guarded. Wei Li lowered himself to the stone floor. It was a slow process, given his bulk, but he executed it with practiced dignity. He knelt, bowing his head. Sir Wei Li of House Manderley, Your Grace, Jonaran announced from his table, reading from a list. He speaks for White Harbour. Robert sighed loudly. The sound echoed through the hall. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, staring down at Wei Li. Stand up, man, Robert commanded. His voice was deep, gravelly, and laced with irritation. I hate it when people grovel on the floor. It takes up too much time. Stand up. Wei Li pushed himself upright, brushing the dust from his knees. He looked up at the king. Thank you, Your Grace, Wei Li said respectfully. White Harbour, Robert grumbled, rubbing his bearded jaw. What do you want, Sir Wei Li? Taxes reduced? A dispute over fishing rights? Make it quick. My head pounds relentlessly today, and this chair is actively trying to stab my back. Cersei Lannister shifted slightly, her lips pressing into a thin line of disapproval at her husband's lack of royal decorum. I have no petitions for myself or my city, Your Grace, Wei Li said, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet hall. I am here on an errand. An errand? Robert asked, raising a thick black eyebrow. For whom? For my liege lord, Your Grace, Wei Li said. I bring a letter and a gift from Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell. The change in the room was immediate and absolute. Robert Baratheon sat up straight. The boredom vanished from his eyes. The irritation smoothed away from his face. He actually smiled. It was a wide, genuine expression that transformed his rugged features. Ned? Robert asked, his voice suddenly full of energy. You bring words from Ned. A murmur rippled through the assembled courtiers. The king's fondness for the Lord of Winterfell was well known. Eddard Stark had marched south, won the war, and then vanished back into the snows, refusing any position in the capital. He was a figure of mystery to the southern lords, a shadow who held the king's absolute trust. Cersei's expression darkened considerably. Her jaw clenched. She despised the mention of the northern lord. Eddard Stark was a ghost that haunted her marriage, a standard of brotherhood that Robert constantly held above her family. I do, Your Grace, Wei Li confirmed. Well, give it here. Robert said eagerly, gesturing with his hand. Don't just stand there making me wait. Wei Li reached inside his velvet doublet. He withdrew a heavy parchment scroll, sealed with a thick dollop of red wax pressed with the sigil of the dire wolf. He stepped forward and handed the letter to Sir Baristan Selmy. Baristan took the scroll. He inspected the seal briefly to ensure it was intact, then turned and walked up the steps of the Iron Throne. He offered the letter to the king. Robert snatched it from the king's guard's hand. He broke the wax seal with his thumb, unraveling the parchment. The court fell silent, watching the king intently. Robert held the parchment up to catch the light from the high windows. He cleared his throat and began to read silently. Wei Li watched him carefully. Lord Stark had instructed him to deliver the letter directly to the king and to observe his reaction. Robert's eyes scanned the first few lines. To his grace, Robert of the House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals, the Royner, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. Robert's lips moved slightly as he read the formal titles. He rolled his eyes at the greeting. Then, his eyes hit the next sentence. If you think that is how I will greet you in private, then you can kindly kiss my ass. Robert froze. His eyes widened. A sudden, sharp snort escaped his nose, echoing loudly in the quiet hall. He suppressed his smile, his shoulders shaking. Cersei looked at him sharply. Your Grace, she asked, her voice dripping with ice. Is something amiss? Robert ignored her. He continued reading. I hope you are keeping the Iron Throne warm with your massive backside, though I imagine the only thing you have conquered lately is a roasted boar and a few casks of wine. I hear the small council meetings are tedious, try not to sleep through them all. A loud, booming chuckle erupted from Robert's chest. His face turning red with suppressed amusement. Jonaran stepped closer to the dais, looking concerned. Robert? What does Ned say? Is there trouble in the north? Robert held up a hand, silencing his hand. He kept reading, his eyes moving rapidly down the parchment. Jokes apart, I hope you are doing well, Robert. I brewed a new drink in the north. I hope you will enjoy it. Mix it with a few fruit juices or sweet wine, or drink it directly if you feel brave. Be warned, it burns the throat. Try not to set your beard on fire. Drink until you lose consciousness, Robert. It might make dealing with the southern lords tolerable. Robert could not hold it in any longer. He threw his head back and roared with laughter. It was a massive, unrestrained sound that bounced off the stone walls and the high vaulted ceiling. He slapped his knee, the parchment shaking in his hand. He laughed until tears pricked the corners of his eyes, the sound filling the room with genuine, unadulterated joy. The court stared in utter confusion. The minor lords exchanged bewildered glances. The scribe stopped writing. Cersei Lannister looked mortified. She stood rigid, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her face drawn in humiliated fury. A king did not cackle so crudely on the Iron Throne. Your Grace! Cersei hissed, stepping closer to him. You are making a spectacle of yourself. Robert waved her off, still laughing hard. He wiped a tear from his eye and looked down at Jonaran. John, Robert wheezed, catching his breath. The man is a menace. He sits in his freezing castle and writes to me with the same insolence he had when we were boys. Jonaran smiled faintly. He knew the bond between the two men better than anyone. It is good to hear Lord Stark retains his spirit, Your Grace. His spirit. Robert boomed, looking down at Wayley Manderley. He says he brewed a new drink. He tells me to drink until I lose consciousness. That is a command I can happily obey. Robert leaned forward, his headache apparently forgotten. Sir Wayley! Robert shouted. Where is this drink? He says he sent a gift. Bring it here immediately. Wayley bowed. He turned to the heavy doors of the throne room. Bring in the crates. Wayley commanded his guards. The 4 Manderley guards stepped outside the doors for a moment. They returned carrying 2 heavy wooden crates between them. They walked down the long aisle of the great hall and set the crates gently on the stone floor at the base of the dais. Wayley walked over to the first crate. He took a small iron pry bar from his belt and wedged it under the wooden lid. With a sharp wrench, he popped the lid open. Inside, packed securely in fragrant pine sawdust, were rows of square bottles. Wayley reached in and pulled one out. He held it up by the neck. A collective gasp swept through the court. The lords closest to the dais leaned forward, straining their necks to get a better look. Even Cersei Lannister broke her mask of indifference, her green eyes widening in surprise. It was the bottle itself that shocked them. In the south, glass was a luxury. Windows were made of cloudy, thick material, often yellow or green. Clear glass was incredibly rare, imported at massive expense from the free city of Myr. When it was used for containers, the bottles were small, delicate things meant for expensive perfumes or rare poisons. The bottle Wei Manderly held was massive. It was thick, heavy, and perfectly square. But more importantly, it was completely, flawlessly clear. The sunlight streaming through the high windows caught the bottle, passing straight through it without distortion. The liquid inside was entirely transparent, appearing perfectly clear, resembling fresh water. Jonaran walked out from behind his position and approached Wei Li. He stared at the bottle. "By the seven," John murmured. "That glass, it is completely clear. And so thick. How much did Lord Stark pay the Myrish guilds for this?" Wei Li puffed out his chest. He felt a surge of intense northern pride. Lord Stark had explicitly told him not to explain the manufacturing process, only to state its origin. "He paid nothing to the Myrish guilds, Lord Aran," Wei Li said loudly, ensuring the entire court heard him. "This glass was made in Winterfell. From northern sand and northern fire." The whispering in the hall intensified into a loud buzz. "Winterfell? The savages in the snow are making clear glass? Impossible." Cersei Lannister stared at the bottle, her mind racing. Clear glass production required massive infrastructure and skilled artisans. If the North was producing this, it meant they had wealth and technology the South was entirely unaware of. Robert did not care about the glass. He cared about what was inside it. "Give it here," Robert demanded, waving his hand impatiently. "Stop staring at the bottle, John, and give me the drink." Wei Li stepped forward and handed the heavy square bottle to Sir Barristan. Barristan took it carefully. He noted the weight of the thick glass and the tight wax seal over the cork. He walked up the steps and presented it to the king. "The fire in the water." Robert grabbed the bottle. He looked at the clear liquid sloshing inside. "He says it burns," Robert muttered, a challenging grin on his face. He drew a hunting dagger from his belt and sliced through the wax seal. He popped the cork out with his thumb. Robert brought the neck of the bottle to his nose and took a deep sniff. He jerked his head back slightly, his eyes watering. "Gods," Robert rasped. "It possesses the sharp, clean scent of an alchemist's workroom." Lord Stark advised mixing it with fruit juice, "Your Grace," Wei Li offered politely from the floor. "Or sweet wine. It is very potent." "Mix it." Robert scoffed loudly. "Ned Stark does not know how to drink. You take a gift from a friend straight." Robert raised the heavy glass bottle to his lips. "Your Grace, wait." Cersei Lannister stepped forward, her voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the anticipation in the hall. "You cannot simply drink an unknown substance sent from hundreds of miles away. Let your food taster try it first. For all we know, it is poison." Robert lowered the bottle slightly, turning to glare at his queen. "Poison? From Ned Stark? You have lost your wits, woman. Ned would sooner cut off his own hand than poison my cup." "It is basic caution, Robert," Cersei insisted, her green eyes flashing. "Do not be a fool." "The only fool here is the one questioning my brother's honor," Robert snapped. He turned his back on her dismissively, tilting his head back and taking a large, confident swallow from the bottle. Cersei's face flushed with furious heat. She stared at Robert's broad back, her fingernails digging into the palms of her hands. He had humiliated her before the entire court, choosing his trust in a northern lord over the counsel of his own queen. She looked at the heavy, square bottle in his hand. It was a crude, brutal shape, yet the glass was flawless. It was a direct insult to southern refinement, a silent declaration that the North possessed wealth and skill she could not comprehend. The throne room watched in complete silence. Robert swallowed. He lowered the bottle. For 2 seconds, he sat perfectly still. Then, his face turned a deep, vibrant shade of purple. His eyes bulged. "Hurkkhh." Robert choked violently. He leaned forward, slapping a hand against his massive chest. He coughed, a harsh, wet sound that echoed in the hall. He pounded his breastplate, wheezing for air, his eyes watering profusely. "Your Grace!" Baristan Selmy stepped forward, reaching out in concern. "Poison!" one of the minor lords in the back shouted in panic. The Northmen brought poison. The Manderley guards immediately gripped the shafts of their tridents, stepping closer to Wei Li, ready to defend their lord. The tension in the room spiked instantly. "Hold!" Jonaran shouted, raising his hands. Robert held up a hand, silencing the hall. He kept coughing, wiping his watering eyes with the back of his sleeve. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He sat back against the twisted swords of the Iron Throne. He closed his eyes. A heavy silence descended again. Everyone watched the king. Slowly, the purple hue faded from Robert's face, replaced by a healthy, robust flush. He placed a hand over his stomach. He could feel it. The intense, fiery burn traveling down his throat had settled in his gut, radiating an immediate, powerful warmth throughout his entire body. It chased away the dull ache of his hangover and sent a surge of energy through his veins. Robert opened his eyes. He looked at the clear bottle in his hand. Then, he looked down at Wei Li Manderley. A massive, booming laugh erupted from Robert's chest. It was louder and more joyous than his reaction to the letter. "By the gods old and new!" Robert roared, his voice shaking the rafters. He spoke the truth. "It burns going down and strikes with tremendous force." He looked at Jonaran, his face beaming. "John, you have to try this. It clears the mind instantly. I feel ready to run a mile in full plate." Jonaran smiled, relieved that the king was not dying. "Perhaps later, Your Grace. I have a long day of decrees ahead of me." At the edge of the dais, Grand Maester Pycelle stared at the square bottle in the king's hand. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly, rattling his chain of office. Clear glass of that thickness required furnaces burning hotter than any known guild in Westeros possessed, and the liquid itself, to produce a distillate of such purity without poisoning the drinker, was advanced alchemy. It surpassed the masters of Myr and Lys. The North was not supposed to have this knowledge. A few paces away, Varys the Spider stood with his hands tucked into his wide sleeves. He did not look at the bottle, he looked at Wei Li Manderley, and then at the political map of the realm in his mind. Eddard Stark was not simply brooding in the snow. He was building an industry. An industry that generated wealth. And wealth shifted the balance of power away from Casterly Rock and Highgarden. Varys offered a soft, powdered smile. The game had a new player. Robert turned his attention back to Wei Li. The king looked absolutely delighted. "Sir Wei Li!" Robert shouted. "This is magnificent. Tell Ned he is a mad genius. This is the strongest spirit I have ever tasted. It makes Arbor Gold taste utterly dull." Wei Li bowed deeply, a surge of relief washing over him. The mission was a success. "I will relay your praise to Lord Stark, Your Grace," Wei Li said. "You will do no such thing," Robert declared. Wei Li froze, confused. "You will stay right here in King's Landing," Robert commanded, pointing a finger at him. "You are not leaving today. You are going to stay in the Red Keep. I am going to write a letter to Ned myself. A proper letter, telling him exactly what I think of his greeting." Robert leaned forward, resting his heavy arms on his knees, holding the bottle of vodka securely. "You and your men will be given the best guest chambers in the castle," Robert announced to the hall. "You will eat from my table. You will drink my wine. You will enjoy the hospitality of the capital until my letter is ready." He looked at Jonaran. "John, see to it. Give them the Riverview rooms." "It will be done, Your Grace," Jonaran nodded. "Thank you, Your Grace," Wei Li said, bowing low again. "I am honored by your hospitality." "No, I am honored by the gift," Robert corrected, taking another, much smaller sip from the bottle. He winced slightly at the burn, but smacked his lips in satisfaction. Clear glass and liquid fire. The north is full of surprises these days. He looked around the court. The lords were still staring at the crates. Council dismissed. Robert shouted abruptly, waving his free hand. Petitions are over for the day. The king has received a gift, and the king intends to enjoy it. Get out, all of you. The court scrambled to obey. No one argued when Robert Baratheon dismissed them. The minor lords bowed quickly and hurried toward the heavy oak doors. As the hall erupted into movement, Cersei stepped back into the shadows near the pillars. She caught the eye of a Lannister guardsman wearing a crimson cloak. She beckoned him close. The Manderley guards, Cersei whispered, her voice a quiet, sharp tone. When they are settled in their quarters, find them. Ply them with arbor wine and gold. I want to know exactly how that glass is forged and what goes into that liquid. Find out, or do not return to my service. The guardsman bowed stiffly and slipped away into the crowd. Jonaran approached Wayley as the hall emptied. Sir Wayley, the hand of the king said politely. If you will follow me, I will have the stewards prepare your quarters. And we will have these crates moved to the king's private solar. Lead the way, Lord Arryn, Wayley said. As they walked toward the side doors, Wayley looked back at the Iron Throne. King Robert Baratheon sat alone on the monstrous chair. He was no longer fidgeting. He was slouched comfortably against the swords, the heavy square bottle resting on his knee. He was looking at the clear glass, a contented smile on his face, lost in thoughts of the north and the brother he missed. Wayley smiled to himself. Lord Stark had known exactly what he was doing. The northern spirit had officially conquered the south. Chapter 39, Wolfpack. The courtyard of Winterfell was no longer just a training ground for soldiers. It had become a laboratory for the future. Ned Stark stood by a large wooden trough, watching as masons mixed a thick, grey slurry. It wasn't mortar. It was something stronger. Beside him, Maester Luwin held a scroll, his chain clinking in the cold wind. The shipment from Dragonstone arrived this morning, my lord, Luwin reported, looking at the grey powder being shoveled into the trough. 100 sacks of volcanic ash. It came on a royal galley, along with the dragon glass. And the letter? Ned asked, testing the consistency of the mix with a stick. From His Grace, King Robert, Luwin said, handing the parchment to Ned. Ned broke the seal and read silently. Ned. Here is your dirt. I had to threaten the Dragonstone Castellan to get him to load it. He thinks I've gone mad, shipping dust to the north. I told him you probably eat it for breakfast to stay grim. I also sent the black rocks. The maesters say they are useless, but if you want to build a castle out of sharp glass, be my guest. I'm holding Dragonstone until a son pops out of Cersei, though with my luck, he'll probably cry when he sees a sword. Send more brandy. The court is boring and the wine is too sweet. Ned smiled faintly, rolling the parchment back up. He seems, in high spirits, my lord, Luwin noted diplomatically, judging by Ned's expression. He is high on spirits, Ned corrected. But at least he sent the ash. He turned his attention back to the trough. The workers were mixing the volcanic ash with the lime dust from the glassworks and seawater brought up the white knife. It fumed and hissed as the chemical reaction took hold. Pour it, Ned ordered. The masons tipped the trough. The grey sludge flowed into a wooden frame set into the mud of the courtyard, a test section of road. Roman concrete, Ned whispered, the name from another world slipping out. To Luwin, he said, Valyrian stone. It sets underwater. It grows stronger with time, not weaker. This is what will pave the king's road. Luwin looked at the drying sludge with skepticism that was slowly turning into awe. If this works, my lord, we could build bridges that last 1,000 years. We could pave the neck. We will, Ned said. But first, we finish the trade. He walked to his solar, the business of the realm calling. The trade network was growing. On his desk sat a small sack of grain. It wasn't the golden wheat of the reach or the barley of the north. It was white, hard, and grew in water. Rice. Oberyn Martell had kept his word. The sack had arrived with a merchant caravan from White Harbour, accompanied by a letter stamped with the sun and spear. Lord Stark. The merchant from Yeti was difficult, but I am persuasive. Enclosed is the mud grain you asked for. He claims it feeds empires in the east. I also spoke to my brother about the bitter beans cape, the merchant called them. Doran is cautious, as always, but he is intrigued by the gold you promise. We have planted a test crop along the green blood. If they sprout, you will have your first batch of the crop. The ice house in the water gardens is finished. It holds the cold well. My brother enjoys his chilled wine, and for that alone, you have his thanks. Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Oberyn Martell. Ned ran his fingers through the rice grains. We plant this in the neck, Ned told Luwin, who had followed him up. The reeds have plenty of marsh. If we can turn the swamps into paddies, Greywater Watch becomes the breadbasket of the lower north. Rice, Luwin mused. I have read of it. It requires heat and water. The neck has water, Ned said. The summers will provide the heat. We start small. If it fails, we lose a sack of grain. If it works, we feed thousands. But progress drew eyes. The glassworks were a marvel. Clear, strong glass produced in sheets large enough to cover acres. It was a secret worth killing for. The magisters of Myr, who held the monopoly on lens crafting and clear glass, were not pleased to see a rival rising in the frozen north. They didn't send armies. They sent eyes. Ned had caught them a week ago. 2 men, posing as itinerant tinkers looking for work in the winter town. They had asked too many questions about the temperature of the furnaces, the mixture of the sand, the source of the soda ash. Ned hadn't needed guards to find them. He had felt them. He had been walking through the glassworks, inspecting Benyon's progress, when he felt a sharp dissonance in the force. A spike of deceit amidst the honest labor of the workers. He had followed the feeling to the storage shed. The men were copying diagrams Ned had drawn for the bellows system. They hadn't even drawn weapons. Ned had simply walked in, closed the door with a thought, and stood there. The pressure of his presence had driven them to their knees before he even spoke. Now, they were in a wagon headed for the wall. We need to tighten the net, Ned said to Arthur Dane later that day in the training yard. Myr sent spies. Next time, it will be the sorrowful men. They won't want to steal the secret, they'll want to kill the man who holds it. Arthur nodded. The castle guard is loyal, Ned. But they are soldiers. They stand on walls and watch the horizon. Assassins don't march up the King's Road with banners. Exactly, Ned said. We need something else. A shield that moves. And I don't want soldiers. Soldiers have bad habits. I want blank slates. The next morning, Ned summoned 20 recruits to the inner yard. They were not highborn lords. They were not knights. They weren't even men. They were boys. The oldest was 15, the youngest barely 12. They were street rats from the winter town, orphans of the war, and sons of tanners and smiths who had too many mouths to feed. They stood in a ragged line, shivering in thin tunics, looking at the Lord of Winterfell with a mixture of terror and hunger. They were scrawny, dirty, and desperate. They are children, Roderick Castle grumbled, looking down at the line with skepticism. You want to guard the castle with pups, my lord. Pups grow into wolves, Roderick, Ned said quietly. Veterans have fear. Veterans have old loyalties. These boys, they have nothing. I will give them everything. Ned walked down the line. He looked into their eyes. He saw the hardness of winter survival. He saw the desperation to belong. He stopped in front of a 14-year-old with a bruised cheek and eyes like flint. "What is your name?" Ned asked. "Willem," the boy said, not bowing. "Are you hungry, Willem?" "Always," the boy replied. Ned turned to face them all. "You are here," Ned said, his voice carrying over the wind, "because you survived. The winter tried to kill you. The war tried to starve you. But you are still standing." He gestured to Arthur Dane. "This man is the greatest swordsman in the world. He is going to teach you how to fight. Not like a soldier in a line, but like a warrior who isn't afraid of anything." Arthur stepped forward. He looked at the boys not with disdain, but with the evaluating eye of a master craftsman looking at raw iron. "You will be tired," Arthur promised. "You will be sore. You will wish you were back in the gutters. But if you stay, you will never be hungry again. 3 hot meals a day," Ned promised. "Warm clothes. A bed in the keep. And coin for your pockets." The boys straightened up. To them, this wasn't a job, it was a kingdom. "But in return," Ned said, his voice dropping to a low growl, "you serve Winterfell. You serve the North. You serve my family. My wife. My sons. And my guests." He looked at them, his grey eyes hard. "You will be the invisible shield around my children. If an assassin comes, you will see him before he draws a blade. If a spy listens, you will hear him before he speaks." He paused. "I am offering you a pack. Will you run with it?" There was a moment of silence. Then, Willem stepped forward. "For the North," the boy said. One by one, the others stepped forward. "Good," Ned said. "Arthur, mold them." The training of the Wolf Guard was not a task of weeks, but of years. Arthur made that clear from the first day. They were raw clay, and the kill would be slow and hot. It would take 2, perhaps 3 years before they were ready to stand guard alone. Arthur Dane taught them the steel. He drilled them in the yard until their hands blistered and calloused over. He taught them the spear wall, the sword thrust, and the dagger in the dark. He stripped away the clumsy brawling of the streets and replaced it with the cold efficiency of a knight who had survived the King's Guard. But Ned Stark taught them the body. He established a new training ground behind the armory, away from the prying eyes of the main yard. He filled it with strange equipment constructed by Mycon's apprentices, wooden beams set high on posts, heavy sacks of sand, and stones carved with handles. "A warrior is only as strong as his foundation," Ned told them. He introduced them to the Iron Path, a regimen of conditioning that baffled the master-at-arms at first. Instead of just sparring, Ned had them lifting their own weight. He showed them how to hang from the high beams and pull themselves up until their chins touched the wood, over and over, until their backs screamed. He taught them the earth press, pushing the ground away while keeping their bodies rigid as planks. He made them lift the carved stones, not throwing them, but squatting with them, building legs that could march for days and spring like coiled steel. Then came the storm sprints. "You do not run until you are tired," Ned barked, standing in the mud. "You run until you die, then you rest for 10 heartbeats, and you run again." It was a brutal cycle of explosive exertion followed by minimal recovery. It shredded their lungs. It burned the fat from their frames and replaced it with lean, dense muscle. Even Arthur Dane, initially skeptical of these peasant drills, joined in. He stripped off his tunic and worked alongside the boys. He found that the earth presses and the weighted squats challenged muscles that swordplay rarely touched. "It builds explosive power," Arthur admitted one evening, wiping sweat from his chest after a session of sprints. "It is not knightly, but it is effective." "We aren't building knights," Ned reminded him. "We are building wolves. And wolves need to run down their prey." The boys absorbed it. They worshipped Ned for feeding them, and they idolized Arthur for teaching them. They became a unit. A family within a family. "They're getting dangerous," Roderick admitted a month later, watching a 12-year-old scale a wall with just his fingertips. "Little devils. They're loyal," Ned said. "That's what matters." But while the boys trained with steel, a smaller, more secret group trained with something else. The gods would remain their sanctuary. Ned, Benyon, Arthur, and Anna, Lyanna, gathered every morning. The progress was slow, but steady. Benyon had mastered shielding. Anna was mastering speed. Arthur was refining his sensory anticipation. One morning, as Ned was guiding Anna through a levitation exercise, trying to lift 3 stones at once, he felt a presence at the edge of the god's wood. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a spy. It was bright. Melancholy. Loving. Ned signaled for her silence. The stones dropped from the air. Ashura Dane stepped out from behind a sentinel tree. She was wrapped in a heavy cloak, her breath misting in the air. Her violet eyes were wide with shock. She had seen. "Ned," she whispered. Ned stood up. He didn't deny it. He didn't make excuses. He walked over to her. "You saw," he said. "I saw Lyanna." "Anna, lifting stones," Ashura said, her voice trembling slightly. "I saw Benyon stop a branch from hitting him by staring at it." She looked at Ned. "What is this?" she asked. "The Force," Ned said. "The magic of the first men. The magic of life." Ashura looked at Arthur. Her brother was sitting calmly by the heart tree. "You knew?" she asked. "I am learning," Arthur said. "It is a path." Ashura looked back at Ned. "Can I learn?" she asked. Ned blinked. "You want to?" "I am the Lady of Winterfell," Ashura said, her chin going up. "I am the mother of your heir. If my husband and his family are this, I do not want to be left behind. I want to protect my son. I want to protect Jon." Ned reached out with his senses. He probed her aura. He hadn't checked before, not deeply. He had been too focused on the Starks. He felt her presence in the Force. It felt like water. Deep, calm, empathetic water. She had it. "You have the potential," Ned confirmed. "It is there. Dormant." "Teach me," Ashura said. Before Ned could answer, another figure stepped out from the trees. Elia Martell. She looked frail in the cold, huddled in furs, but her dark eyes were sharp. She had followed Ashura. "And me," Elia said softly. Ned sighed. "Princess." "Don't call me princess," Elia said, walking forward to stand beside Ashura. "I am a guest. A hostage. A mother." She looked at the floating stones that lay on the ground. "My children are targets. My family is hunted. I have no sword hand, Lord Stark. I have no army. But if there is power here, if there is a way to defend them that does not require strength of arm." She looked at him with a desperate intensity. "I want to learn. I need to be more than a victim." Ned looked at the 2 women. He looked at Arthur, who nodded. He looked at Lyanna, who smiled. "The pack grows," Lyanna murmured. "Very well," Ned said. He motioned for them to sit. "Be warned," Ned told them. "You are starting late. The physical toll is high." "I don't need to throw boulders," Ashura said, sitting on a root. "I just need to know." "I don't need to fight," Elia said, sitting beside her. "I just need to see." "Then close your eyes," Ned said. He moved to Ashura first. He placed his hand on her shoulder. "Connect." He sent the pulse. He felt the connection form. It was smooth, natural. "You have it," Ned whispered. "We will begin." He moved to Elia. The princess was fragile physically, but her mind was iron. He touched her shoulder. "Connect." He felt her connection. It was faint but sharp. "And you?" Ned said. He stood back. 5 students. Benyon, Anna, Arthur, Ashura, Elia, and Ned, the teacher. It was a strange, broken circle of people. Survivors of a war that had destroyed their families. "We begin with breathing," Ned said. "The cold is your friend. Let it strip away the fear." They sat in silence under the weirwood tree. The snow began to fall, dusting their cloaks in white. In the solar, the plans for the glassworks and the roads lay waiting. In the courtyard, the wolf guard drilled. In the crypts, the dragon glass waited. Ned Stark closed his eyes and joined the meditation. He was building a kingdom of stone and steel. But here, in the quiet of the woods, he was building something stronger. He was building a future that could fight back. Chapter 40, Iron Plough. The winter town was usually a place of silence in the summer, a collection of empty stone houses waiting for the snows to drive the small folk in from their farms. But today, the market square was packed. Ned Stark stood on a raised wooden platform, normally used for announcements or executions. Today, it was a classroom. Hundreds of farmers from the surrounding holdfasts had gathered. They were men of the earth, weather-beaten, calloused, and deeply skeptical of anything that hadn't been done by their grandfathers. Beside Ned stood Maester Lewin, holding a large slate with diagrams drawn in chalk. "My good people," Ned, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "I have called you here not to take your harvest, but to double it." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Doubling the harvest was a tale for children or a lie from a desperate lord. "The soil is tired," Ned said, pointing to the ground. "You plant wheat until the earth gives up, then you let it rest. You lose a year of food waiting for the land to heal. It is the old way. It is the way of starvation." He gestured to Lewin, who turned the slate around. It showed a circle divided into 4 parts. "The 4-field system," Ned announced. "Wheat," Ned pointed to the first quadrant. "The bread of life." "Turnips," he pointed to the second. "Or barley." "Clover," he pointed to the third. "Or grass for grazing." "And the fourth?" Ned paused for effect. "Beans." "Or peas." An old farmer at the front, leaning on a hoe, spat on the ground. "Beans, Lord Stark? We can't live on beans. And clover is for sheep." "Exactly," Ned said. "The clover feeds the sheep. The sheep manure the field. The beans put strength back into the soil. They catch the air and bury it in the dirt. Wiki, nitrogen fixation. Legumes restore soil fertility. Livestock integration provides fertilizer." Ned looked at the sea of doubtful faces. He knew he sounded like a madman. "I am not asking you to believe me," Ned said. "I am asking you to try it. I have set aside 10 acres of the castle lands. I will plant them my way. But I need you to do the same." "It is not just the seed, Lord," the old farmer challenged, his voice raspy. "It is the dirt itself. The soil here, it is heavy. Wet. Clay and ice. Our plows, they scratch the surface. To plant deep like you say, to turn the earth over, we'd break our oxen before we broke the ground." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The north's soil was notorious tough, dense, and unforgiving. "I know," Ned said. "The old scratch plows aren't enough." He signaled to Mikan, who was waiting by a covered cart near the platform. The smith pulled back a canvas tarp. Revealed underneath was a strange, heavy-looking implement. It was made of iron, not wood. It had a sharp vertical cutter at the front, but behind it was a curved, twisted plate of metal, a moldboard. "This is the iron plough," Ned announced. "Designed to cut the heavy clay and turn it over, burying the weeds and exposing the fresh soil." The farmers looked at it. It looked heavy. "Impossible to pull. It will sink," the old farmer scoffed. And no ox can pull that through wet clay. Let's see, Ned said. He stepped down from the platform. He walked to the edge of the market square where a patch of raw, unbroken ground lay hard-packed earth mixed with stones. He didn't call for an ox. He grabbed the handles of the plough himself. "Mikan, guide the front," Ned ordered. The smith grabbed the harness ropes. The crowd watched, confused. The Lord of Winterfell was going to plough? Ned gripped the iron handles. He took a breath. Force strength, engage. He didn't need to be flashy. He just needed to be unstoppable. He channeled the energy into his legs, his back, his shoulders. "Pull!" Ned shouted. Mikan pulled. Ned drove the plough forward. The vertical coulter sliced into the hard earth with a crunch. The share cut the sod. And then, the curved moldboard caught the slice of earth and flipped it. It didn't scratch. It churned. Ned walked forward, pushing with a strength that would have stalled a draft horse. The iron plough tore through the rocky soil, leaving a deep, clean, perfectly turned furrow in its wake. The heavy clay that would have stopped a wooden plough simply curled away from the iron curve. He plowed a 20-foot line in seconds, his boots digging into the dirt, his breath steady. He stopped. He pulled the plough from the earth and stood up, not even winded. He looked at the farmers. They were staring at the deep, dark furrow. They had never seen soil turn so completely, so easily. "It works," Ned said, his voice ringing in the silence. "The curve does the work. It turns the soil for you." The old farmer walked up. He knelt and touched the overturned earth. It was loose, aerated, ready for seed. He looked at the heavy iron plough, then at Ned. "Iron," the farmer whispered. "It doesn't break." "It doesn't break," Ned agreed. "And if you use it, neither will you." He looked back at the crowd. "I have 10 of these ready. Mikan is making more. Who wants to be the first to break the real ground?" "And if the crops fail?" the old farmer asked, standing up, but his tone had changed. It wasn't mockery anymore, it was negotiation. "If the winter comes early, I pledge the honor of House Stark," Ned declared. "Any man who adopts this rotation, if his yield is less than his average, I will make up the difference from the Winterfell granaries. I will pay you for the crop you didn't grow." He leaned forward. "But if it works, if you grow more food than you ever have, you keep the surplus. No extra tax on the increase for 5 years." The farmers exchanged glances. Insurance against failure, tax-free profit on success, and a tool that could defeat the Northern Earth? That was a language they understood. "I'll try it," the old farmer said, spitting into his hand and holding it out. "Give me the iron, Lord Stark. I'll turn the earth." Ned took the hand. "It's yours." Dash. The next day, the ground shook. Great Jan Umber rode into Winterfell like a storm front. He was followed by a dozen of his household guard, massive men on massive horses, wrapped in furs and chains. The Great Jan vaulted from his saddle in the courtyard, his boots hitting the stones with a heavy thud. He roared a greeting to Roderick Castle, slapped a stably bowie on the back hard enough to nearly knock him over, and marched up the steps to the Great Keep. Ned met him in the solar. He had prepared a feast: roasted boar, wheels of cheese, and, of course, a bottle of winter's breath. "Ned," the Great Jan bellowed, crushing Ned in a hug that tested the limits of the Force-enhanced durability. "You skinny wolf! You look like you haven't eaten since I left. And you look like you've eaten everything in the last hearth," Ned wheezed, patting the giant's back. "Muscles, lad. Pure muscle." Great Jan laughed, releasing him. He eyed the bottle on the table. "Is that the good stuff?" "The best," Ned said, pouring him a generous measure. "Sit, John. We have business." The Great Jan sat, the chair groaning in protest. He downed the vodka in one gulp, sighed happily, and wiped his mouth. That hits the spot. Keeps the cold out. So, what's this about? You called me all the way down here. Are we marching again? No war, Ned said. Land. He unrolled the map of the north. He pointed to the strip of land south of the wall. The new gift, Ned said. The Great Yan frowned. Night's Watch land. Useless. Overgrown. Full of wildlings. Not anymore, Ned said. I made a deal with Lord Commander Corgile. The watch doesn't have the men to farm it. They've agreed to return it to the jurisdiction of the north. Great Yan's eyes widened. You took the gift back? The Night's Watch agreed to that. He agreed to let us farm it, Ned corrected. In exchange for the taxes. The yield goes to the wall. But the land needs lords. It needs protection. It needs men who aren't afraid of a fight. Ned looked at the Great Yan. Most of the new gift belonged to the Umbers before Queen Ali's Anne took it, Ned said. It was your grandfather's land. Your heritage. He placed his hand on the map. I want you to take it back, John. I want you to settle it. Move your small folk into the abandoned villages. Build holdfasts. Patrol the roads. The Great Yan stared at the map. His face, usually quick to laugh or rage, was solemn. This was ancestral territory. Land that had been torn from his house generations ago. You're giving it back to me. Great Yan whispered. It's yours, Ned said. But there are conditions. You pay no tax to me. You pay no tax to the Iron Throne. Every copper, every bushel of wheat, every bale of wool from that land goes to Castle Black. You are the steward of the Watch's survival. I can do that, Great Yan swore. I'll feed the crows. I'll make them fat. And you'll farm it my way, Ned added. He explained the four-field system. The beans. The clover. The moldboard plough. The Great Yan listened, skeptical but willing. Beans? Fine. If it grows, we eat it. If not, the sheep eat it. I'll try your magic dirt, Ned. Good, Ned said. But that's just the land. I have another idea. A business. Business. Great Yan snorted. I'm a warrior, Ned. I don't count coppers. You like gold though, don't you? Gold buys steel. And wine. The last hearth, Ned mused, tapping the map location. It's cold. Windy. Rugged. You have hills, you have sheep. Thousands of them. Sheep are boring, Great Yan grumbled. We shear them, we sell the wool to White Harbor, we eat the mutton. It's a living. It's a living, Ned agreed. But it could be a fortune. Wiki, textile industry. Cashmere. Merino. High-quality wool processing. The sheep in the last hearth, Ned said. They are hardy breeds. Thick coats to survive the winters. But the wool is rough. Scratchy. It keeps you warm, Great Yan shrugged. Who cares if it itches? Rich people, Ned said. Rich people in King's Landing. In Liss. In Pentos. They want warmth, but they want softness. Ned pulled out a new drawing. It wasn't a plough or a still. It was a loom. A complex, water-powered loom. I want to start a textile mill at Last Hearth, Ned said. But not just for rough spun. I want you to breed your sheep selectively. Pick the ones with the softest undercoats. The finest fibers. Breed for softness. Great Yan looked like Ned had suggested breeding dire wolves for cuddling. Yes, Ned said. And we process it differently. We wash the lanolin out carefully, save the grease, it's valuable for salves, and we card it with fine iron combs. Then we weave it. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a swatch of fabric he had commissioned from a weaver in the winter town, using the specific processing technique he described. He tossed it to Umber. The great Yan caught it. He rubbed it between his massive thumb and forefinger. His eyes widened. It's soft, he admitted. Like a woman's hair. But thick. It's warm as fur, but soft as silk, Ned said. We call it ghost wool. Or giant's fleece. We brand it. We sell it to the south as a luxury item. Cloaks that don't itch. Blankets that feel like clouds. And the mill. Water power, Ned pointed to the last river on the map. You have the fast water. You build the mill. I'll send Myken to help with the gears. You process the wool there, instead of selling raw bales to Manderley for pennies. You sell the finished cloth for dragons. The great Yan looked at the swatch of fabric. He looked at the map of his reclaimed lands. You've thought this through, he rumbled. I have, Ned said. The North has been sleeping, John. We have resources we've ignored because we were too busy surviving. It's time to thrive. Giant's Fleece, Great Yan tested the name. He grinned. I like it. Sounds tough. But feels. He rubbed the cloth against his cheek. Nice. It will make House Umber rich, Ned promised. Done. Great Yan slammed the table. I'll build your mill. I'll breed the fluffy sheep. But if any southerner calls me a seamstress, I'm taking his head. Fair terms, Ned laughed. They spent the next hour working out the details. The Littles and the Norais, Ned said. They are mountain men. They know the high country. I'm sending some of them to the gift as well, to help you secure the borders against the wildlings. Good men, Great Yan nodded. Hard men. They'll hold the line. And the trade route, Ned continued. You move the cloth down the King's Road to Winterfell. We consolidate it with the glass and the vodka. Then we ship it down the White Knife to the harbour. A unified northern trade fleet. Manderley will want his cut, Great Yan noted. He gets the shipping fees, Ned said. And the tax exemption applies to this too. For 10 years, every dragon we make stays here. Ned poured another round of vodka. To the new gift, Ned toasted. And the giant's fleece. To the north. Great Yan roared, clinking his cup so hard he nearly shattered Ned's. As the giant drank, Ned looked at the map. The pieces were moving. The food supply was being secured. The borders were being fortified. The economy was diversifying. The foundation was laid. Now, he just had to keep the peace long enough for the cement to set. Chapter 41, The Leviathans of the North. The Solar of Winterfell had become the engine room of a kingdom. Where once it had been a place of quiet brooding for Stark lords, it was now a war room of industry. Ned Stark stood behind his desk, which was covered not in reports of grain or wool, but in large, detailed blueprints of naval architecture. Seated before him were two of the most powerful men in the north. Lord Wyman Manderley occupied a specially reinforced chair, his massive girth spilling over the sides, a cup of ale in his hand. He looked jovial, his multiple chins wobbling as he laughed at a joke, but his eyes pale and watery were sharp as flint. He was the Lord of White Harbour, the richest man in the north, and the gatekeeper to the sea. Beside him sat Jeor Mormont, the Lord of Bear Island. He was a stark contrast to Manderley. Lean, weathered, and bald, with a beard that looked like wire wool, Jeor wore simple black mail and a bearskin cloak. He looked like a man carved from the frozen cliffs of his island home. He hadn't yet taken the black, he was still the old bear, the head of his house, watching the sunset sea with grim vigilance. The Iron Throne has granted us a fleet, Ned began, tapping a royal decree that bore Robert's signature. Or rather, permission to build one. They expect us to build a few fishing smacks to chase away smugglers. I intend to build something else. Iron-born hunters, Georg Mormont grunted. About damn time. The squids have been getting bold. They sniff around my island every summer. They don't just sniff, Ned said. They measure. Balong Greyjoy is sitting on the sea stone chair, dreaming of the old way. He thinks the dragons are dead and the wolves are tired. Ned unrolled a large map of the western coast of the north. He pointed to a jagged peninsula jutting out into the Sunset Sea. Sea Dragon Point, Ned said. A ruin, Georg noted. Ancient. Empty. Good timber, though. The best timber, Ned agreed. Deep forests of pine and sentinel trees. Natural deep water coves. It is the perfect place for a shipyard. And a city. Wyman Manderley raised an eyebrow. A city, my lord? In the Wolf's Wood. A port, Ned corrected. To guard the west. We rely on White Harbor for the east, Lord Wyman, and you have done a magnificent job. But the west is open. If the Ironborn strike, they can reeve all the way to Deepwood Motte before we can muster a defense. He looked at the map. I intend to rebuild Sea Dragon Point. I will build a fortress there, and a harbor. It will be the base of the Western Fleet. And who will hold it? Georg asked. It needs a strong lord. The Ironborn will test him. My brother, Ned said. Benyon. Georg nodded slowly. The pup has grown. I saw him in the yard. He has the look of a wolf. He does, Ned said. He is young, but he is diligent. And he needs a seat. He needs a purpose. Winterfell is my home, and Cregan's heritage. Benyon needs his own legacy. Ned leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. But a lord needs a lady. And Sea Dragon Point needs a connection to the islands. To the true guardians of the West. He looked at Georg. I propose a match, Lord Mormont. Between Benyon Stark and your house. Ma Edge has daughters, Ned said. I speak of Daisy. Daisy is young, Georg rumbled. But she is a she-bear. She fights as well as any boy on the island. She's wild. Benyon likes wild, Ned smiled. He has the wolf blood, tempered by duty. I think a she-bear would suit him better than a southern flower. She would break a southern flower in half, Georg chuckled. If Benyon is willing, and if Daisy doesn't break his nose when he asks, then House Mormont would be honored. A Stark and a Mormont. It is a strong knot. I have spoken to Benyon, Ned said. He is not opposed. He wants to meet her first, of course. To see if he survives the introduction. Wise lad, Georg grinned. I'll bring her to Winterfell next moon. Let them hunt together. If they kill a stag without killing each other, we'll write the contract. Now, Ned said, shifting the tone. To the ships. He pulled out a series of large, detailed schematics. These weren't the rough sketches of a lord, they were the precise engineering diagrams of the wiki. Wyman Manderley leaned forward, his interest piqued. He knew ships. He owned more of them than anyone in the north. These aren't galleys, Wyman observed, tracing the lines of the hull. The keel is too deep. And the sails. Galleys are for the summer sea, Ned said. They need oars. They need slaves or massive crews. They are slow against the wind. The Sunset Sea is rough. The waves are high. He pointed to the diagram. This is a caravel, Ned said, introducing the term. And this larger one, a carrack. He pointed to the rigging. Triangular sails, Ned explained. Lateen rig. They allow the ship to sail into the wind. To tack. An iron-born longship relies on a single square sail and oars. If the wind is against them, they row. If we have these sails, we can outmaneuver them in open water without breaking the backs of our crew. Wyman studied the rudder design, a stern-mounted rudder with a wheel mechanism, replacing the traditional steering oar. This would cut sailing time significantly, Wyman murmured. And the hold, it's deep. Spacious. They are ships of war and trade, Ned said. Heavy displacement. High castles fore and aft for archers. We can mount scorpions here and here. He looked at the two lords. I want to build 50 of these for the Western Fleet. And 50 for the East. Initially. Wyman whistled. 100 ships? My lord, the cost. The cost is wood and iron, Ned said. We have the wolf's wood. We have the iron mines. We have the labor. He turned to Gior. Bear Island has the best timber in the west. I want the Western Fleet built there, and at Sea Dragon Point once the docks are ready. I will send you shipwrights from White Harbor to teach your men these designs. Gior nodded. We have the wood. We have the hands. My people are fishermen, Stark. They know the sea. If you give us the plans, we will build you leviathans. But ships need eyes, Ned added, reaching into a small wooden box on his desk. He pulled out a strange instrument. It was a small bowl of water, with a magnetized iron needle floating on a sliver of cork. The needle spun lazily, then settled, pointing unwavering to the north. A wayfinder, Ned said. A lodestone compass. It always points north always, Ned said. Day or night. Storm or fog. With this, our captains don't need the stars. They don't need to hug the coast like the Ironborn. We can sail into the deep ocean. We can cut straight across the Bight or the Sunset Sea. Gior stared at the needle. That changes everything. The Ironborn rely on sight. If we can navigate the open water, we can strike from nowhere. Exactly, Ned said. Blue water supremacy. Trade, Ned said, latching onto the word. That brings me to the next problem. Moving goods. He pulled out a map of the white knife. We have glass. We have vodka. We have the giant's fleece from the Umbers, which will come in the future. Getting it all to White Harbor by wagon is slow. The King's Road is improving, but mud is still mud. He pointed to the river. The White Knife is the artery of the north. But it's shallow in places, and the rapids near the Wolf's Wood make it dangerous for deep draft ships. Ned laid down a new drawing. Barges, he said. These weren't the clumsy rafts the Northmen used. These were wide, flat-bottomed vessels designed for heavy cargo. Shallow draft, Ned explained. Wide beam. They can carry tons of cargo in inches of water. We build a towpath along the river bank. Teams of horses or oxen pull the barges upstream. Downstream, they float with the current. Wyman nodded enthusiastically. I have seen similar vessels on the Rhône, my lord. They move mountains of goods. Exactly, Ned said. We dredge the worst of the rapids. We build locks gates in the river to lift the barges over the steep sections. He sketched a simple canal lock on a scrap of parchment. We turn the White Knife into a highway. Umber brings his wool to Winterfell. We load it onto barges with the glass and the whiskey. It flows down to White Harbor safe, dry, and cheap. Wyman looked at Ned with something approaching adoration. My lord, this would reduce transport costs by half? Maybe more. It makes the north smaller, Ned said. It connects us. And what do we fill these ships with? Gior asked, ever the pragmatist. Wool and glass are fine, but 50 ships need a lot of cargo to pay for their upkeep. Ice, Ned said. Gior blinked. Ice. Frozen water, Ned confirmed. You have plenty of it on Bear Island. Gior laughed, a dry, rattling sound. We have enough ice to bury the world. You want to sell it? To Dorne, Ned said. To the Reach. To King's Landing. He explained the insulation method, the double hulls, the sawdust packing. In the summer, Ned said, a block of ice in Sun's pair is worth more than a block of gold. They will pay for it. And we have it for free. Gior looked at the blueprints of the ships. He imagined the vast, frozen lakes of his island being cut into blocks, loaded onto these fast ships, and sailed south to sweating lords who would pay fortunes for a cool drink. It's madness, Gior muttered. Selling winter to summer. It's business, Ned said. These ships, the Western Fleet, they are warships first. But warships are expensive. They eat gold while they sit in the harbor. So, we make them earn their keep. He looked at the two lords. When there is peace, they are merchant vessels. Carrying ice, lumber, fur, and iron to the south. When there is war. Ned's eyes hardened. They drop the cargo and load the soldiers. The alliance of three. Ned poured drinks for them, the winter's breath vodka, crisp and cold. To the Western Fleet, Ned toasted. And the Eastern Fleet. To the Leviathans, Wyman agreed, draining his cup. To Benyon and Daisy, Gior added, looking thoughtful. The wolf and the bear. It will be a noisy marriage. I count on it, Ned smiled. He looked at the map. The lines of trade and defense were drawing themselves. The wall was being reinforced. The coasts were being secured. The internal economy was booming. One more thing, Ned said. The cruise. Gior asked. I don't want just sailors, Ned said. I want warriors. The iron-born board ships. They fight hand to hand. Our crews need to be marines. We will train them, Gior promised. Bear Island men are born fighting. And I will send Manderley marines to train with them, Wyman offered. Cross-training. So the East knows the West. And the gear, Ned added, pulling a small sketch from his stack. Plate armor is a death sentence at sea. If you fall in, you sink. He showed them the design. Boiled leather, Ned explained. Reinforced with steel studs for critical areas, but backed with cork. It floats. And short axes and pikes, not long swords. In the tight quarters of a deck, a long blade gets caught in the rigging. An axe ends the fight. Wyman inspected the drawing of the armored vest. Floating armor. The iron-born wear mail. If they go over, they drown, Ned finished. We swim. We fight. We win. Dash. After Manderley and Mormont had left to enjoy the hospitality of Winterfell, and likely debate the merits of the vodka, Ned remained in the solar. He looked at the ship blueprints. The caravel. The carrack. The compass. He was skipping centuries of naval development. The iron-born longships were fast and agile, perfect for raiding, but they were open-decked and fragile. A carrack, high-walled and heavy, would smash through a longship like a hammer through kindling. And with the new Archer platforms, the iron-born wouldn't even get close enough to board. Ned walked to the window. He looked out at the courtyard. He saw Benyon walking with Arthur Dane. They were laughing. Benyon looked happy. He had a purpose now. See Dragon Point. A lordship. A future. Ned touched the glass of the window. His glass. The north was safe. For now. Chapter 42, The Engines of the North. Time in the north had always been measured in seasons. The long summer, the cruel winter, the false spring. But the year following the rebellion was measured differently. It was measured in stone, in glass, and in gold. Ned Stark sat in his solar, looking out over a Winterfell that was unrecognizable from the grim fortress he had returned to. The castle walls had been repaired, the grey granite scrubbed clean of moss and lichen. But it was the structures inside the walls that drew the eye. The glass gardens had tripled in size, a shimmering sea of clear panes reflecting the pale sun. Steam rose from the vents, a constant reminder of the geothermal heat that kept the vegetables growing even as the first true snows began to fall. Beyond the walls, the winter town was bursting. It wasn't just a refuge anymore, it was a city. The smell of wood smoke was mixed with the scent of yeast, roasting malt, and the sharp tang of hot iron. Ned turned from the window. His desk was piled high with reports. Grain yields, up 40%. Wool exports, tripled. Alcohol revenue, surpassing the gold mines of the Westerlands, projected. It was working. The wiki knowledge, filtered through the pragmatism of the North, was turning a wasteland into a powerhouse. But Ned couldn't do it alone. He had spent the last year playing the role of an industrial architect, summoning his bannermen one by one to give them the keys to their own kingdoms. He remembered the meetings clearly. They had been private affairs, conducted in the solar with heavy guards at the door. First had been House Karstark. Ricard Karstark had arrived expecting war or taxes. Instead, Ned had given him a rock. Coal, Ned had said, placing a lump of black anthracite on the desk. An iron. He unrolled a geological map of the lands near the Grey Cliffs. Your lands are sitting on a fortune, Ricard. We need fuel for the glassworks. We need iron for the rails and the plows. I want you to open mines. Deep ones. Ned had given him the designs for safety lamps, water pumps to drain the shafts, and rail carts to move the ore. You dig it, Ned promised. And I will buy every ounce. Next was House Glover of Deepwood Motte. Galbart Glover was a man of the forest. Ned gave him the trees. Naval stores, Ned explained, showing him a diagram of a pine tree being tapped for resin. Tar. Pitch. Turpentine. We are building a fleet, Galbart. 100 ships. They need to be sealed. They need to be watertight. He handed over the plans for a kiln to process the resin. The wolf's wood is vast. Manage it well. Cut 1, plant 2, and you will supply every shipyard from Bear Island to White Harbour. Then came House Riswell of the Rills. To Roderick Riswell, Ned gave the future of cavalry. The Dornish sand steeds are fast, but they freeze in the snow, Ned said. Our Garans are tough, but they are slow. I want you to breed them. He laid out a breeding program: selective genetics to create a winter courser. A horse with the endurance of the north and the speed of the south. We will need them, Ned said darkly. When the roads are paved, we will need horses that can fly. And finally, the most dangerous meeting of all. House Bolton. Roose Bolton had sat in the chair, his pale eyes watching Ned with unblinking intensity. He knew he was being watched. He knew his spies had disappeared. You have the weeping water, Ned said. A fast river. Good for wheels. You want me to mill grain? Roose asked softly. I want you to tan hides, Ned said. He pushed a schematic across the table. It was an industrial tannery, using chromium salts, or their Westerosi equivalent, and bark liquor to process leather faster and softer than the old urine-soaking methods. We need leather for the fleet, Ned said. Armor that floats. Sails. Boots for the Wolf Guard. Saddles for the Riswell horses. You will produce the best leather in the 7 kingdoms. Roose looked at the plans. Tanning was a dirty, smelly business. It was usually work for lowborns. A stinking trade, Roose noted. A golden trade, Ned corrected. And necessary. A flayed man has no secrets, Lord Bolton. But a tanned hide protects an army. I prefer protection. Roose had smiled, a thin, bloodless expression. He understood the message. Make yourself useful, and I will make you rich. Cross me, and I will replace you. The Dread Fort will provide, Roose had said. There was one more resource Ned needed. Bureaucracy. He summoned Helman Tallheart of Torrens Square. Paper, Ned told him, placing a sheet of creamy, wood pulp paper on the desk next to a rough piece of parchment. Sheepskin is expensive, Helman. It is slow to produce. If we want to map the north, if we want to keep records of every bushel of grain, we need something cheaper. You want me to make this? Hellman asked, rubbing the paper between his fingers. Torrens Square has the lake, Ned said. You have water, and you have timber. I want you to build a mill. Not for flour, but for pulp. He showed him the design mashers, screens, presses. We turn wood into words, Ned said. We break the Citadel's monopoly on knowledge. We will print our own ledgers, our own books. The North will not just be strong, it will be smart. But the crown jewel of the new economy remained the alcohol. Ned hadn't kept the monopoly for himself. He couldn't. The demand from the South was too high. Robert alone was drinking a crate a week, and the courts of the Vale and the Riverlands were clamoring for winter's breath and northern fire. So, Ned franchised. He summoned House Hornwood and House Searwyn. I cannot brew enough, Ned told them. Winterfell is bursting. I need partners. He gave them the blueprints for the stills. He gave them the yeast cultures. He gave them the charcoal filtration method. But, Ned warned, his voice hard as iron, this secret stays in the north. If I find a still in the Riverlands, or if a Lannister spy learns the mash recipe, the contract ends. And heads roll. Halle's Hornwood and Medgar Searwyn swore oaths on their ancestral swords. They understood. This wasn't just trade, it was a weapon. It was the gold that would build the walls against the long night. To House Dustin in Barrowton, Ned gave the amber spirit whiskey. The barrows were full of peat. Ned taught them how to smoke the malt, how to age the spirit in charred oak barrels to give it the color of gold and the taste of smoke. To House Manderley, he gave the summer spirit gin. White Harbor had access to spices, juniper, and botanicals from the trade ships. Ned showed them how to infuse the vodka with aromatics to create a drink that tasted of pine and berries. Within a year, the North wasn't just exporting fur and timber. It was exporting luxury. While the lords built their fortunes, Ned built his sword. The Wolf Guard had grown. What started as 20 starving orphans had swelled to a regiment of 500. They were no longer a ragtag group of boys, they were a paramilitary force. They occupied the renovated barracks near the Hunter's Gate. They wore grey cloaks and blackened mail. Ned watched them train from the battlements. Arthur Dane was in the yard, shouting orders. Faster! Arthur barked. Dead men don't move. If you are slow, you are meat. The boys and now, a few girls who had proven they were quick enough moved through an obstacle course of ropes, walls, and mud pits. They didn't run like soldiers, they flowed like water. Ned had introduced modern conditioning. HIIT, high-intensity interval training. They ran sprints until their lungs burned. They did burpees until they collapsed. They climbed ropes until their grip was iron. They are fit, Benyon noted, joining Ned on the wall. Fitter than the household guard. Fitter than the night's watch. They have to be, Ned said. They aren't line infantry, Ben. They are the antibodies of the North. The Wolf Guard had a simple mandate: protect the pack. They guarded Elia and Rennis. They guarded Ashura and the boys. But they also guarded the roads. Ned had deployed them in squads of 5. They patrolled the King's Road, the Wolf's Wood, and the White Knife. They didn't just walk, they hunted. Banditry in the North had dropped by 80% in a year. Any man foolish enough to rob a traveler found himself hunted by 5 shadows. The small folk love them, Benyon said. As the economy boomed, the complexity of managing it became a beast of its own. Ned sat in his solar, staring at a stack of trade agreements from Bravos, Pentos, and Gulltown. He rubbed his eyes. He was a builder, a warrior, a teacher. He was not a merchant. You're frowning again, a soft voice said. Ashura walked in. She was carrying a tray with tea steaming, bitter, and made from the beans Oberyn had sent. Her movements were graceful, but there was a subtle deliberateness to her step. Her hand rested unconsciously on the slight swell of her belly beneath her velvet gown. She was 3 moons pregnant. The maester had confirmed it a week ago, much to Ned's delight and Cregan's confusion. Another wolf for the pack, growing strong and safe in the heart of Winterfell. She set the tray down and picked up a ledger, her hand still lingering protectively over her stomach. The Pentashi are trying to underpay for the wool, she noted instantly, scanning the columns. And the Bravasi are asking for a discount on the vodka because of shipping hazards that don't exist. Ned looked at her, his gaze softening as it fell on her midsection. You read the ledger. I grew up in Starfall, Ned, Ashura smiled, sitting on the edge of his desk. My father ruled a port. Trade is in my blood. And frankly, you are too honest for these magisters. Ned leaned back. You're right. I hate haggling. Then don't, Ashura said. Let me do it. I have the energy for it, morning sickness be damned. Ned smiled. The Lady of Coins. Why not? It's yours, Ned said. But, there is something else. He lowered his voice. Merchants see things, Ash. They travel. They talk. If we are trading with the free cities, with King's Landing, with Old Town, we have eyes everywhere. Ashura's expression sharpened. You want spies? I want news, Ned corrected. I want to know if the Golden Company is hiring. I want to know if Olenna Tyrell is conspiring in Reach. I want to know what Tywin Lannister is whispering in his cups. A network, Ashura mused. Like the spiders. Better than the spiders, Ned said. Because ours is built on profit, not fear. I can do it, Ashura said. Elia can help. She knows the court in King's Landing better than anyone. She knows the codes. Elia. She wants to be useful, Ned, Ashura said. She hates sitting idle. We've been talking. She has a mind for puzzles. If I gather the whispers, she can decode them. Ned nodded slowly. Ashura the diplomat, Elia the analyst. It was a formidable team. Do it, Ned said. Set it up. But be careful. Varys watches. Let him watch, Ashura said, sipping her tea. He'll only see a lady buying silk. Dash. The final piece of the year's work was the most ambitious. A convoy of wagons left Winterfell, heading south. They weren't carrying trade goods. They were carrying stone. Or rather, the grey mud that became stone. Ned rode with them as far as the King's Road gate. Roman concrete, Ned said to the master mason leading the team. Remember the mix. Keep it dry until you pour. Aye, my lord, the mason said. We've practiced. Moat Cailin is the throat of the north, Ned told him. I want it choked. I want those 20 towers rebuilt. Not just patched rebuilt. Stronger than before. Taller. We will raise them, Lord Stark, the mason promised. We will make them smooth and hard as iron. No Andal army will ever cross the neck again. Ned watched the wagons roll out. He felt the force humming in the earth. He was sealing the borders. He was arming the people. He was blinding the enemies. But the most important training wasn't happening in the yard. It was happening in the God's Wood. The circle had expanded, but the progress was hard-won. Ned sat under the heart tree, watching his students. Ashura sat with her eyes closed, her hands resting on her knees. The air around her shimmered slightly. She wasn't moving objects, she was feeling. The bird, Ashura whispered. In the high branch. It's hungry. Good, Ned said. And the guard at the gate. Bored, Ashura said, a small smile touching her lips. Thinking about supper. Ashura's empathy was her strength. She could read a room instantly. She could sense a lie before the words were formed. She was becoming the perfect diplomat, the perfect Lady of Winterfell. No spy could hide from her. Elia sat beside her. The princess was different. Her connection was distant, visual. I see, snow, Elia murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. Deep snow. A tower by the sea. A black flag. East Watch, Ned identified. What do you see? Work, Elia said. Men cutting ice. Loading ships. They are singing. Remote viewing. It was exhausting for her, leaving her drained for days, but it was a strategic weapon of immense power. Elia was the eye. And then there were the warriors. Benyon stood 20 paces away. Arthur Dane threw a rock at him. Hard. Benyon didn't dodge. He just glared. The rock hit an invisible cushion of air a foot from Benyon's face. It slowed, stopped, and dropped to the ground. Solid, Arthur praised. It still gives me a headache, Benyon grumbled, rubbing his temples. Better a headache than a broken nose, Ned called out. And Anna. Lyanna was a blur. She was running through the trees, leaping from root to branch. She moved faster than a human should. She was using force speed to enhance her agility, turning herself into a kinetic missile. She landed in front of Ned, breathless, grinning. I beat the wind, she panted. You scared the squirrels, Ned corrected, though he smiled. But you're getting faster. Fast enough to beat Arthur. Fast enough to run away from him, Arthur said, walking over. Which is usually the smarter move. Ned looked at them. His family. His army. They were getting stronger. The magic of the first men was waking up. Chapter 43, The Lion, the Rose, and the Sun. Casterly Rock was not a castle, it was a mountain carved into a fortress. It was a monument to power, wealth, and the absolute certainty that House Lannister stood above all others. But today, Tywin Lannister sat in his solar, 600 feet above the crashing waves of the Sunset Sea, and for the first time in 20 years, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. On his desk, next to the ledgers of the gold mines, sat a square glass bottle. It was empty. Tywin had not drunk it himself. He preferred Arbor Gold, but he had watched his brother Kevin drink it, and he had seen the effect. Clear spirits, Tywin murmured, tapping the glass. Clear glass. And now, ships. Kevin Lannister sat opposite him, looking weary. The merchants, they are talking. Ships from White Harbor are arriving in Old Town and the Arbor. New ships. Carracks, they call them. Faster than our galleys. Deeper holds. Tywin's green eyes narrowed. Eddard Stark. He builds, Kevin said. Roads. Glass gardens. Distilleries. The North is no longer a sleeping giant, Tywin. It is waking up hungry. Tywin stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the vast expanse of the sea. He had miscalculated. When he had marched on King's Landing, he had intended to secure the throne for Robert and bind the new king to House Lannister with blood and gold. He had succeeded in the marriage. Cersei was queen, but he had failed to secure the gratitude. Eddard Stark had stolen that. Stark had taken the capital, saved the city, and then walked away with the moral high ground, leaving Tywin looking like a necessary evil rather than a savior. And now, Stark was turning the North into a rival. He has the Vale, Tywin analyzed coldly. Through Jon Arryn. He has the Stormlands through Robert's affection. The Riverlands are tied to Stannis Baratheon, who has gratitude towards Stark for making Robert return the Stormlands to him. And he has Dorne's favor. And then there is trade. The vodka, Kevin noted. The small folk love it. It keeps them warm. It keeps them sending gold north, Tywin corrected. He turned back to the room. He looked at the family tapestry hanging on the wall. Jaime stood in the center, painted in white armor. But that was the past. Jaime was home. Ned Stark had done what Tywin could not, he had convinced Jaime to leave the King's Guard. He had given Tywin his heir back. It was a gift, yes, but it was also a maneuver. By saving Jaime's honor, by revealing the wildfire